Okay, so fáilte gach duine. Yeah, so céad míle fáilte le gach duine inniu. So just want to welcome everyone to the new Education Forum 2020 Ireland. So the theme for today is exploring your local place through outdoor education. Hi, Stephen. I'm glad to see you're from Mayo, joining us all the way from Mayo. So yeah, like a nice thing which might be nice to do is if everyone kind of puts into the chat where exactly people are from, where you're joining us from today. It'd be just nice to see where everyone's joining from, since it is linked to place. Hi, Mike from Edinburgh. Nice. Welcome. So Mike is with Venture Trust, who's also a partner in the project as well. Hi, Bev. Joining us from Salisbury. Very good. Oh, from India. Amazing. From Galway. Brilliant. Hi, Hannah. Hannah's been very helpful over the last week. She's been helping me prepare for the for the webinar. Brilliant. Shane. Hi, Shane. Shane's a participant. Hope you're keeping well. And Paul from Clonmel. Brilliant. Very good. Brilliant. So yeah, and I'm currently in Thurles, but I am from Laois, so I have crossed the county boundary this morning, but all in the name of work because the internet is not great at home. So yeah, so I'm coming from Thurles today. So yeah, so basically, just I guess today about the whole theme of exploring your local place through outdoor education. So, you know, last night I was awake thinking about everything this morning, and I thought, you know, what's kind of the Irish words for place and local place. So it would be áit á túil. So it's interesting how the word local also has the word place in it. So we're intrinsically linked to the place that we're what we call local, the area around us. And so the full title in Irish was Teascéalaíocht de áit á túil trí oideachais lasmuigh. So Teascéalaíocht, so it's breaking down, like kind of exploring is the word exploring. So you're kind of exploring different stories about a place, and then your local place, then áit á túil, and oideachais lasmuigh is outdoor education. So yeah, I mean, why is this happening today? And it's mainly due to the FOLM project. So it's from outdoors to labour market, and that's what it stands for. So we'll just give a breakdown of what we're going to go through today. So today's schedule, so I'll be hosting it throughout the session. And so we've done a bit of housekeeping, and then what the theme is, and I'm going to go over what exactly is involved with FOLM. Then we have an interview with the past participant, who's Daniel. So we'll be chatting to him in a bit. And I also have a video of Fina, who's another past participant who's just joined the new model. So I have a video of her, and I'll show that to all of you as well. Then we have Anya, who will be presenting on her research on place-based education and how the Altbheo Trust uses place-based learning. And then we'll have just a little break, so people don't get zoomed out. And after that, we'll have Jed Dowling. So he's going to kind of give us the kind of practical side of what FOLM looks like, and also how is it applied in the outdoors in terms of the FOLM program, and also his own company Terra Firma, which is also based up in Mayo. So we'll have two Mayo people talking today. And we'll have Stephen Hannon afterwards from GMIT who'll be joining us, and he's going to kind of take more of a theoretical side of the place-based learning and education, and how he finds it when he's actually educating future outdoor educators. And hopefully we'll have CIE join us, Jorge or Joanna. They're also a partner in the project, and just kind of they're going to give the overall view of what FOLM looks like on it in an EU perspective, and perhaps what's next. And then we'll just have a quick Q&A, and I'll just have a poll. It's like a survey that I might get you to fill out, and then we'll just do a wrap up of the seminar. So yeah, that's kind of the layout of this morning. So yeah, so essentially, who is this program for? So in case you haven't heard about this program, it's called FOLM. So it's basically targeted for anyone who's between 18 to 29 years of age, and for anyone who's not in full-time employment, education, or training. So, you know, essentially where are we getting this from? It's actually from the EEA and Norway grants. So they are the people who have made this all possible and happen for us. So it's from the Fund for Youth Unemployment. And, you know, thanks to them, this is the reason why this great project exists in the first place. So I guess the aim of FOLM, so the FOLM program aims to reduce youth unemployment by helping young people find a career pathway through a personal development program incorporating outdoor learning. So it's using the outdoors as a tool to help people to discover themselves, to find out what it is that they'd like to do with their life in terms of either career, what their next step is in terms of education, all those, you know, just taking that time out to think about where it is that they'd like to go and what it is they'd like to do. So, you know, we really believe, and I've seen for myself, as I'm sure Mike and those in Venture Trust have seen as well, that it really does help enhance motivation and self-confidence. It teaches valuable skills for the next steps in life, and participants become more connected to the environment, you know, by spending time out in the environment. It is brilliant to see how they connect with it. And then also to the social aspect, participants meet new people that might be, you know, from their own local area, that they may not have ever met before. So yeah, that's the aim of FOLM. So there's 3 different phases. So the first phase is recruitment and engagement. So it's getting in touch with the agencies, organizations, and young people themselves. So, you know, how we've obviously had to all adapt due to COVID, but, you know, we are giving online presentations for agencies and the young people as well, and establishing a relationship with the interested young people. So, and in that first phase, it's just getting to know the young person, and that's where the coaches, we have like a coaching meeting that we meet with the participants before the outdoor learning week. So next we have phase 2, so outdoor learning. So again, this has been adapted and changed due to COVID in Ireland. So it is now a 5-day daily outdoor learning experience. So this is kind of where the participants explore the outdoors through their local area and guided by expert outdoor learning trainers. So some of the skills that we're covering when we do the outdoor learning is, you know, fire making, leave no trace, outdoor cooking, navigation, and time management. And that's just a few of the things that are, you know, explored through the outdoors during the week. We also have, you know, in relation to place-based learning, it's about learning about their local area. So, you know, we have a group at the minute that's actually out on campus, and, you know, they went and did a treasure hunt of the town, and they were using photos. They had to try find old photos of the place, you know, of the local town. So that was a tip I picked up from the training in Untitled Trust. So thanks, Anya. So yeah, it's brilliant that, you know, they're able to see their local place in a different way or in a new light through this phase. And phase 3, so coaching and mentoring. So this is probably sometimes overlooked, I think, but it's very, very important. So after the outdoor learning week, the participants continue to work alongside a coach for 5 to 6 weeks to help them. So that this is to, you know, recognize the strengths and talents, build their soft skills, further their self-esteem and self-awareness, and basically get just, find that place and that, the skills that they can use and transfer that, they've learned in the outdoors, and then bring it on into their everyday life. So it's getting fortifying attitudes for employment. So the coaches help work with the young people on their CV development, maybe helping them identify different training and job initiatives by using a platform that will assist employment and training opportunities. And not only do they work with them for 5 to 6 weeks, but they also follow up for a further 6 months. So, they'll check in once a month for 6 months afterwards to see how they're getting on, how are they dealing with their action plan. So they'll actually write an action plan at the end of the outdoor learning, and then that's what the coach helps develop them throughout their coaching and into their mentoring as well. So I'm just trying to be aware of the time. I've 1 minute left, and so I'm going to show you a video of Fina first of all, and then I'm just going to get chatting to Daniel afterwards. So I'll just stop this part now. So please let me know if you can't hear the video. Hi everyone, so this is Fina here, and she's a past participant who took part in Group 8 in FOLM in Ireland. So Fina, why exactly did you do FOLM?
I think it's because I was in a part of my life that I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go, where I was heading. I was in college and I was doing the whole college experience. It was great, but I didn't feel like I was going where I wanted to. So I took time out and I said, okay, I'll try something, maybe traveling. But then I found FOLM on Facebook, and it just really seemed interesting because I've liked the outdoors, but I just haven't been, I suppose, in a safe way on the outdoors or anything. And it did say about orienteering and those kind of skills, which I thought maybe I could really use.
And what do you think you've actually learned? What skills did you learn from FOLM?
I think the orienteering was really interesting, like just getting your bases in with the compass and the maps, and really, like, I was taught the basics when I was younger and everything, but like you forget all those things, and it's nice to as well to see it in the real life. So like here you're noticing kind of like the higher ground and the lower ground, the tree line and that kind of thing, and then you're also looking at your map and seeing, okay, I have this far to go, but I also need to know my paces and those kind of things, and there's things I just never knew about, and like, it's really helpful, and obviously I'm trying to keep it up and keep going, so that's why I'm here at the moment.
And what was your favorite part of FOLM so far?
um I think it was when we were out in the mountain and we actually got to take turns and actually leading the group. So they just, obviously they were there for security and all that kind of thing. But the idea that I had to actually go down the steepest part of the hill and make sure that the rest of us as well could get down, I felt that was quite empowering, because by the time we all got down, we were all quite like, yes, we did it. So that was great about it as well. So. The coaching I found very helpful, because obviously you get the coaching on a one-to-one basis while you're out in the mountain or out, wherever you're doing your skills, like building a fire, looking at the ground where you could actually camp and things like that. And it's quite natural as well to be like, hey, can we just take a few minutes here, we'll just chat about things. And I think that's kind of helpful as well, because your mind is focusing on whatever you're doing at that present time, but you also have to think about the future. That's why you're doing FOLM. You're like, where am I going? Where am I heading? And how could this actually help me get there? And I think that was great. And then also the coaching afterwards is really good, because whatever issues came up in the week or whatever, you could actually really work on and say, okay, I need to remember these, and I need to bring it up with my mentor and just be like, okay, this is what I need to work on, and what are the steps I need to head on then, so. I'm actually going back and finishing up my college, so I've got another year and a half to do, and I'm really excited to finish it up, because it's getting towards the end of it, and I get to get my career ahead, and I hope to do midwifery, or to finish up my midwifery and get out on the floor, and but at the moment I've actually just got a job offer there a few days ago, so and which is in healthcare as well, which will also really help with trying to get experience out on the floor, so that's great. So
Brilliant. And would you recommend for people to do FOLM?
Yeah, definitely, because I think it wasn't long ago, well, not very long ago anyway, that I had very little experience on the mountain or anything like that, and now I'm slowly but surely seeing a little bit more of like Ireland itself, and I'm like, it's pretty nice. You get to look up at them, when you're driving around, but you're still like, it's just not the same when you're up here and you're looking at this, and you're like, do you know what? I think it's better to stay up here and stay up here for a couple of hours and do it safely as well. So
amazing, well done. Well, thanks a million, Fina, for doing this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your hike. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So yeah, what was people's thoughts on that? You can just write it into the chat if you like. Thanks, Eula. Love the support. That was that. So Fina was a past participant who just went on the last course. So she was on the 5-day experience. So we have a past participant who was on the expedition back in last November. So it's Daniel. So I'll just unmute you, Daniel, if that's okay. Let yourself be known to people.
Hello?
Hello. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, yeah. You see
me? Yeah, 1 second actually. I might stop sharing and then we should be able to see you. Yeah, give us a good wave there, Daniel.
How are you, lads?
So yeah, I guess Daniel, thanks a million for joining us anyway. Just let everybody know I've pre-warned Daniel, try not to curse, but if one comes out,
I apologize.
Yes. So yeah, Daniel, why did you decide to do FOLM?
I was working with TUIS, which was a scheme, and my boss and dad said, would you be interested in a hiking trip? You go to a meeting, they'll explain what it is, there's no worries about it, no not. I hadn't a clue what would come out of it. I thought it was just a hiking, go camping for a week, nothing else. So I went to the meeting, they explained everything, and I think I knew what I was going to do before I went to the meeting. Go camping and still get paid because my job's going to still pay me. So I wasn't going to miss out on anything, and just do it for the experience.
Brilliant, yeah, that's brilliant. And yeah, the fact that you were just kind of like, right, I'm going to give this a go and try it, because I remember you even on that first day, and because actually that course ended up being cancelled once, but you came back the second time for the
Do
you remember the storm?
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you got the second time round. We managed to get up the mountain. So what do you think did you learn from FOLM?
I learned to accept myself. I learned, well, on the mountain we learned how to navigate. We learned how to hike. Arvine and Jed, two wonderful people. I can never say a bad word about them, except how much food you brought up. They brought 3 lads that hadn't a clue about the mountains, about any of this, and they made it feel like home up there. So it was amazing. That was an amazing feeling. There was no fear in it at all. I gained so much that I couldn't explain in 15 minutes. I've learned to live. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I remember you even when I remember it was your favorite moment was when you locked eyes with a deer.
Oh yeah. I ran up. I was kind of fitter than the rest of the lads, so every day I'd be up ahead. I'd be maybe 5 minutes ahead of everybody, and we were heading up to Leanitz Memorial, and I was the timekeeper, So it was my job that day to pick a place for lunch and what time we're going to eat at. Um, so I was heading up anyway, and I said, right, we'll have it here. It was in this clearance, and it was out into, you could see for miles, there's trees going down either side of you. And I was sitting there, and I was sitting on my bag, and I was wrecked. And I was trying to catch my breath, and next thing, a deer walked into the path. It sniffed the path, and then just stared at me. And it was like I was a deer in headlights. I just froze, and I was just staring at it. And I remember trying to reach for the GoPro, but my eyes wouldn't leave me. And a gunshot then went off somewhere in the distance, and it scattered into the woods. But I was then known as the deer stalker.
You adopted that name.
I adopted it.
Oh yeah. No, like yeah. And do you think that was probably one of your favorite moments of FOLM, or did you have another?
Every moment was brilliant up there, but my favorite was I spent my whole life running from everything. Every chance I ever got, I ran from it. And on the mountain, I was ahead of everyone else, and I ran up the mountain. The last night we camped out on the mountain. We decided to go up to the peak that was beside us. And again, I ran as fast as I could to get up to the top. And we got up into this clearance. It was like this massive field, and I ran over to the other side. And I got so far that if I kept going, I would have started heading down the mountain. So I said, right, I'm going to sit here and just admire it for 2 minutes. I sat down, pure comfy. It's like sitting in the bench, and I felt something on my chest, and it just told me to lie down and shut up. And I collapsed backwards, and it was like I had no thought in my head. I had nothing racing. Joe, if like say if you're trying to go to sleep, you have all these thoughts and everything. I had nothing. It was just peace. And I don't know how long I was lying there, but the thought then creeped back into my head, and it said, right, it's time for you to get up. And that thought kept me going even to today. It was to get up. It was right. You if you fall, you can't get up, and that's when it started. It started up on that mountain. And I have a tattoo on my chest actually. There's a mountaintop I'm dreaming of. So it's that will always be my wake up call.
Amazing. No, like I remember that moment as well. Like myself and Jed were just like, it was just a magic moment. Just, it wasn't us in telling you to go off and sit by yourselves. It just happened. And
yeah.
And Jed and I both looked at each other and were like, we're good. We're going to do the same.
Yeah.
So we just went off and sat by ourselves as well. And just
even with that, like that was the best thing I found with FOLM. It was, he didn't say to me, if you do FOLM, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to change this way and that way, and this is the feelings you're going to get. He brought us up the mountain. We did our task every day, no matter like what it was. It was the stepping stones, if it was kindness, whatever it was. But you didn't try to hammer it down our throats. You let us have our own feelings up there, our own emotions. And I think that's the best thing about FOLM. It isn't you didn't go up there and saying, okay, you're going to feel this way now and this way. It was, you let us experience the mountains ourselves, and it was wonderful.
Thanks, William, Daniel. And how do you think the coaching and the mentoring? How did you find that?
The coaching got me into a computer class, and I think 2 days ago I got a letter saying that I passed all my exams. So
Amazing.
I'm going in doing further now. I'm still going through that. Before COVID, I had plans to go back to college. I was working with Irish guide dogs, and I was going doing the Camino, which is a hike across Spain.
Yeah.
And now the whole thing got cancelled over COVID, and that's perfectly fine, But it was FOLM that kind of said to me, it was me going, oh, I might do this, and FOLM goes, okay, this is what you need to do this. and that was the coaching part. I planted the seed in my head, and they helped water it to help it grow, and that was the coaching. But now I know the whole thing fell apart and all that stuff, but I'm working today. If anyone knows Lough Drumineer, the water park there, throughout the summer I was working there. I helped set up all that, so I was diving and all that stuff. Scared shit. Oh, not of course. I was scared to death. But I could do it because the coaching helped build them blocks. It helped say, right, this is what you need to do to get to here.
Yeah.
You know, it was wonderful.
Amazing. And so I suppose my final question, Daniel, is would you recommend FOLM?
I would recommend FOLM to anyone that is stuck. That when they're looking at two parts in life and they don't know which to go, they hit a dead road, and it's okay. It's perfectly okay to be there. But FOLM is that thing where it won't answer any questions you have, but it will ask you. It won't answer any questions you have, but it will ask you, how important are you? And it will give you the skills and confidence to answer that yourself. And I recommend this to anybody at all that thinks that they're worthless, or they are afraid, or they have fear in them, because FOLM will take the fear away. It's taken my fear away, and I'm tremendously grateful for what this has done for me.
Well, I don't think we can capture it any better than that. Daniel, thank you so much for just telling us your stories and your experience, and for sharing that with us. I think everyone is in agreement. You know, it's inspiring, and it's a brilliant story. You know, and I've seen you from the beginning, and I'm seeing you now, and you've changed so much. And you know, I know myself and Jed are super proud of where you've come from and where you are now.
But
and we're always here for you.
Yeah, but remember that I'm not important in this. I'm not some special case or anything. Everybody can do this. You know, it isn't just it worked for me because it worked for everyone.
Yeah.
And thank you, Alvin. And if I don't know if Jed is on or on, but you too.
I think you do deserve a bull of us, definitely. Fair play. Well done. Thanks a million, Daniel, for sharing. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. So I think I'm just watching the time now. I could listen to you all day, Daniel, to be honest. I think everyone could.
No, you couldn't.
So I think what we'll do next now is we're going to hand you over so our next speaker is Anya Bird, and she is working with the Altbheo Trust over in County Clare. They do some incredible and amazing work in terms of place-based education, and she's currently doing her PhD. So Anya, I'd love to hand you over. You should be able to share your screen. Thanks a million.
Can you hear me there? I can't believe I have to follow Daniel. Daniel, that was just unbelievable. I don't know, kind of feeling a bit emotional after it all. You spoke so well, and to hear such an amazingly transformation, and you know, the power of outdoors, and fair play to you. And I can see great things for you in the future. We'll keep an eye on you, see where you're going. Thank you so much. And what I have to share now is going to seem pretty mundane, I think, in comparison, but this is what I've got, so I'll have to share this. So I think hopefully screen should be sharing. Yeah. So thank you, and I honestly am a little bit rattled after Daniel, so give me a minute. thank you for the opportunity to talk about something that I care really passionately about. And I think that, the story that we've just heard even further confirms how important this is, and that, it kind of gives me hope and the kick to keep going, because sometimes you can wonder why we're doing what we're doing. And I think, as you'll see as I go through the presentation, our approach in Untitled is a little bit more focused on the place and the benefits to a place. And we came primarily from kind of a place conservation idea. But, the quote there by Wendell Berry, I suppose, ties in as well to what we've just heard, that while our focus is place conservation, it also has a huge impact on people. And people are a big part of this story, and looking at connection and how we kind of engage with our places is a really important part of the story. And I was interested as well, even already from Evine's introduction, talking about exploring stories, and that's really, really important, that every place has a story, and then we create our own stories in these places. And we've mentioned the word already, and I'm going to keep mentioning it because I think it really is the key, this idea of connection, and what connection means. And I was also interested to hear the talk of Mayo, because I'm originally from Meath, and Meath and Mayo traditionally don't get on particularly well, but we'll move past that. But again, that idea of, where you're from, where you connect to, what it is that connects you to the place. I'm coming up on my next birthday. I'll have been living outside of Meath as long as I ever lived in Meath. And I always wonder how long I will say I'm from Meath. When do I become from Galway, where I'm currently living? And that there are kind of ideas there around place connection that we'll touch on over the course of the next half hour. So yeah, and at the end of the day, even if you find what I have to say totally boring and don't want to hear it, I will also give you some lovely photographs. So that's the benefit of working in a beautiful part of the country. And we've already seen, from Fina's video, how beautiful Ireland is, and sometimes we don't truly appreciate it. But yeah, so I've some, I can't actually claim the photos. I didn't take them, but I have access to some beautiful photographs. But what I'm going to hopefully touch on over the course of the next 30 minutes or so is Untitled, the organisation I work for, and place-based learning, which is, I suppose, ultimately the theme of today, to look at maybe the value of that approach and where we would see the potential for a place-based approach, and then just to touch on some really practical examples of what this looks like on the ground for us. And I will mention the research that I'm doing as well at the moment. But before all of that, and I was feeling bad about this anyway, and I feel even worse after the amazing positivity, but I'm going to hit you with the bad news. Oh no, sorry, before I do that, I forgot how this is coming. I just want to mention, because I think we do have some international attendees where I'm talking about, because we're talking about place, it's important maybe to situate ourselves. So this is the map of Ireland, obviously, and the Burren, which is where the area that I work in, is here roughly. It straddles two county boundaries, which is interesting in itself. It's in County Clare and County Galway, and it's a rural area predominantly. There are some like little towns in it, but predominantly rural, farmed landscape. Farmers are a really important piece of the story of the Burren. And its kind of identity is based on the presence of limestone rock. So it's a karst region where there's exposed rock that you can see, as you'll see from the photos that come. So that's where I'm talking about. But now the bad news. And again, it's not going to be news to any of us that the world is kind of in a bad enough state in terms of climate. These are just a really small selection of news articles that I kind of Googled yesterday to stick in for today. We've been hearing this stuff for a while, climate crisis, biodiversity collapse. Some people have been talking about this for a very long time. Others are kind of coming more recently to the party, if it is a party, in terms of the state of our planet, and things aren't good. But what I find interesting, and I think we need to consider a little bit more, is the fact that yes, this has been talked about for a long time. why isn't anything really changing? Where is the disconnect between this bad news and what happens on the ground? And I know there are many, many reasons, and it's multifaceted, and there are, you know, big interests at play that kind of impact this. But part of the quest or the answer might be to do with our approach from those who are interested and people who are trying to engage others with this kind of a topic. Sometimes I think the approach is lacking. And again, this is dated research, but I think it is worth mentioning that these guys did kind of an overview and an analysis of a load of different studies in terms of what it is that makes people act in a pro-environmental way, or what is it that brings about these behaviours. And the finding was that 80% at least of the factors don't really have anything to do with knowledge or awareness. So, you know, we're coming, I'd say, from a good few people there, coming from an education background and looking at sharing information with people for a whole variety of reasons. But often one of the reasons for sharing information is maybe to inspire change and action. And particularly if you're coming from an environmental education background, then you're looking maybe to inspire pro-environmental behaviours. And you know, the evidence suggests it's not massively happening, or not happening on the scale that we would hope that it is. And there's one proposed you know, reason for this is this idea of a value action gap. And you know, when you start looking at academic literature, you'll find all of these models and ideas, and this is just one of them, and I'm sure there are many critiques of it, but it is something that kind of makes sense to me on some level. So this value action gap idea, again, it's dated, which also tells you how long people have been researching these topics. Was proposed by a guy called James Blake, and he just looked at, you know, acknowledging that there is environmental concern. We are aware that the environment and our world is kind of in a dodgy place, but what are the barriers that prevent environmental action from happening? If we're acknowledging that, you know, I'd say there are very few people that don't know about climate change, biodiversity collapse on some level. And as you can see, there are individual barriers, you know, specific to each person and their situation, and then obviously the bigger, more societal and institutional barriers. And he's broken them down into a few categories there. You know, that they're individual barriers, that maybe you're just not interested, it's not your thing, you're lazy, we're all lazy at times, you feel like you're the wrong person to take on any of this. This idea then, and this is a really important one, I think, of responsibility, feeling that, look, it's not my problem, I don't own maybe the property, I'm not the farmer, I'm not the person causing the serious damage, but also under responsibility, and very importantly, is that idea there of lack of efficacy or maybe agency, or feeling that, look, I'm not going to be able to make a change. And then really important is practicality. You know, people don't have time, money, maybe the right information, and there's no encouragement, various different factors at play. So I just going to put that out there as a start point, and to consider as I kind of go through a little bit more our approach in Untitled, and it gives a bit of a background as to why we do what we do. So as I mentioned, I work for the Untitled Trust. I've been there since 2012. And the organisation, for those that aren't familiar with us, we're an independent membership charity dedicated to connecting all of us to our places and helping to identify our role in caring for these places. And the organisation was established originally with a very specific focus on the Burren region, and it was established to work with the communities in the Burren in terms of engaging with the Burren, but over the years our remit has kind of expanded, and our programs now could be applied anywhere. They're not specific to this place. This idea of connecting to places is universal, and really the things that we're doing could be done anywhere, and that's something that we're looking at. In terms of the practicalities, for a long time it was 3 part-time staff. More recently we've increased our team. We've a team of 6 part-time staff, and we do about 25, 26 different programs on the ground. We've 700 members, individuals, families, businesses, schools, a whole cohort of different members. And yeah, we've an office in Kinvara and in Galway, and we work with various communities under this umbrella idea of place-based learning, which, you know, plenty of people here are familiar with. It's not something we came up with. It's a very well established kind of way of working in the States particularly. And for us, the definition that works best is learning about place, through place, and for the place. And
I don't have it.
Sorry, the thing is, for us, we've kind of adapted the definition, and I think that's also important, is that all of these things have to be adapted to the specific settings on the ground. You know, you make it work in your context. But you can see there that idea of for the place, like I mentioned at the start, that is primarily our vision is place conservation and looking after the environment. So that's a central part of what we're doing. And it was lovely. Evie had a few words of Irish at the start, and I found that really interesting, that idea of áitiúil, you know, the idea of local, and language again as a way of connecting to place, and another area that maybe we're losing the place names and the context of places. But for us, one of our cornerstone programs is this Altbheo program, with áit, as we know, meaning place, and then beo meaning living. And it works on two levels, in that we're acknowledging that places are living and changing and evolving around us, and also very much keeping the community and the people of the place at the focus, that these are places that people live and make a living, and that, you know, conservation that are looking to protect places without engaging local communities just isn't a model that works for us. It doesn't work, and it just annoys people, really. So this Altbheo program is now being delivered in primary, secondary, and community settings. So working with children from the age of 5 or 6 right up to retirees of 95 and 6, and a very similar kind of model. Doesn't matter who we're working with, it's the same activities, same kind of general layout, and essentially at its core, it's a local heritage course. Because for us, and I think with a place-based approach, very much we take a holistic view of place. So you're looking at the place in terms of the built, the natural, and the cultural heritage, and how they interact. So it's not just about plants and animals, it's about the old buildings, the old walls, the stories of the place, the folklore, the traditions and culture, and all of this richness that really builds up a full picture of a place. And how we kind of go about these courses is, first of all, it's not in any way expert top-down led. And it was lovely, I think Fiona mentioned the idea of, you know, self-directed, or it might have been Daniel talking about deciding for yourself, you know, what to do and what avenues to take and what interests you in this kind of looking at places. So it's providing skills and resources and tools for people to learn about their places themselves, as opposed to telling people. And I have had the experience, and it's daunting, but it's worth it, of standing in front of a room of people and hands up on day one saying, look, I know nothing about this place. I had to put it into Google Maps to find it today, and we're going to learn about it together, and use the resources that are available. So it's inquiry learning, and coming from that idea of asking questions and critical thinking and trying to figure out the stories together. And the nice thing is, at the end of it, all of the projects end with a stewardship project. So a project where people identify areas in their local place, something that matters to them, that they would like to improve or change, and they carry out an action project. So looking at encouraging a sense of informed pride, ownership, and responsibility, and ultimately strengthening our connection to our local places. So I'm just going to talk really briefly about some of those, what this looks like on the ground, the practical activities that you might engage with. And I suppose at this point I should mention that I'm a bit of a fraud talking at an outdoor education event, because actually a good chunk of our activities and the work that we do happens indoors, and it's kind of background work that then is kind of fed into when we do get out. And it's very much, from our perspective, a practicality, that we're looking at the logistics of working with primary school groups, or maybe community groups that can only meet at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday evening in November, and still trying to kind of work on this connection to place. So we work within the structures that exist. You know, if you have a school group, getting them out to somewhere locally, even if it is just walking to it on a couple of times is an undertaking. It's a, and it's a big task, and so we're out as much as we can be, but I have to put the hands up straight away to say we do work a fair bit indoors as well. And this is an indoor activity, looking at maps, and we've already touched on the power of a map. And I've become a bit of a map nerd in my time working with Burnbeo. I'm obsessed with them. The amount of information on a map is just phenomenal. And then our ordnance survey maps are just such a rich source of information that people aren't even aware of. And this is the activity that we do. We get people to look at, this is a 3-kilometer circle, which very conveniently fits on a CD. For as long as CDs remain, we'll be using them to just draw the outline, and then to get your participants, young and old, to look to see what they knew about before the map and what they didn't know about. And it's interesting and sometimes a bit upsetting to see actually how little people know about just the 3 kilometers around them. And this can be water bodies, lakes, rivers, biodiversity features. There are forests marked on the maps. It might be place names, archaeological features, and just to do this kind of an audit. And with younger groups, we then get them to bring it home as well and ask at home, and to bring the learning back home as well. And just start that engagement with, this is your local place. These are the things that are here. What do we know about? What could we learn about? Maybe then we look at another layer of place, another part of the story, look at the census. So like I've mentioned, for us, it's not just about environmental aspects of place, it's also about the people and the stories of the people. So these resources, again, are available online to anybody to look at old census records, to see what that tells us about the lives of the people who lived in our places in the past, to maybe follow the story of some of the families, and then hopefully to get the opportunity to visit some of the houses that these people lived in. And it can be really eye-opening to see, kind of a derelict 1 or 2 bedroom house on the side of a hill that we can see had a family of 15 or 16 living in them. Is another way of looking at these things. Producing models, and again, looking at engaging different types of learning. Sorry, this is a model of a really nice Bronze Age cooking site of Altbheo, and this student has created it, having visited Altbheo locally. And then also we use peer learning, where she gives her peers a tour of the site and explains to them what it's about and the story of it. Maybe using art, again, another way of engaging with place creatively, whether it's drawing, painting, poetry, writing. So many different ways of connecting people with their place. This is actually the activity that Evie spoke of earlier, where we do picture hunts of local archaeological monuments. So these girls have photographs that we've taken, and they're going around trying to find them for themselves in this site, and then put together the story of the place. Again, these are students in our local town here in Gort who have photos from archives of Gort, and comparing and contrasting the story or how Gort looks today to how it looked in the past. We may be looking at biodiversity, using the National Biodiversity Data Centre to see the species that have been recorded in either a 10 or a 2 kilometre square of an area, and then going out, hopefully trying to see if they're still there. Each of these activities can grow into something bigger. And then more practical skills based workshops. So these are a community group who are looking to do some more pollinator friendly planting, and providing the very practical skills to do that. And another thing to mention, I suppose, in the value of a place-based approach is that it moves very much outside of formal education, and is a whole community approach and lifelong learning opportunities. And another nice thing that it provides for is intergenerational learning. So bringing young people to meet older members of their community and hear their stories, and also bringing older members of the community into kind of education settings. And one way that we do this is through heritage walks. So the first Sunday of the month for the past, I think, 15 years, there has been a heritage walk in the Burren, led by anybody and everybody really. An awful lot of farmers lead our walks, because farmers have a very strong connection to place, have a real story, local story to tell, very much focused on information sharing rather than, it's not expedition learning as some of the people here would be familiar with. It's more about sharing knowledge and stories of a local place. And this is then complemented in the winter months by community tea talks. And again, the tea is deliberate, it's very sociable. And I think there's also been mention of this already in terms of FOLM, that it provides opportunity to meet people, which is really fundamental and important. And you know, this is a full hall on a wet November evening. A few too many grey and balding heads. That would definitely be an admission that we'd like to see more young people attending these events. But you know, it brings communities out to meet each other, to talk about topics that are specific to their local area. And it's another nice thing about it is it brings academic research back to the communities. That's really important, because I think too often academic research is extractive and people are interviewed or whatever, but they never hear the results of the research. So it's a nice way to bring it back to them. Another then community within our community, and another way of place-based learning is learning through doing. So we have a group of 300 conservation volunteers who get out on a regular basis and do stuff. And again, you know, this, you know, each of these pieces, they may not appeal to everybody, but you'll find something within it that appeals to you. So the conservation volunteers get involved in litter picks, rebuilding stone walls, archaeological digs. And again, it's learning through doing. They do a lot of biodiversity monitoring with the data centre. And getting hands dirty. And we are back post-COVID in full PPE gear, which is not the most user-friendly way to be out cutting scrub, but you know, people want to get out, and so we're doing it. And then the last just a piece of our work that I'm going to mention, and I think is very important, is the idea of celebration. So I started with bad news, but very much from a Untitled perspective, we don't focus on the bad news. We focus on the positives and look to see the good things that are happening and to celebrate them. And we've two big community festivals that kind of, I suppose, end point and start point of our year. So Burn and Bloom is the summer festival where people celebrate the Burns flowers and biodiversity coming back, and then the Burn Winterage Weekend, which will be happening, albeit very much virtually this year, which is not going to be the same at all, on the October bank holiday weekend, and it's celebrating the farming traditions of the region. And this is a picture of the community cattle drive, where the community get to take part with the farmers. You know, the farmers are doing this every year anyway. They put their cattle up onto the upland areas for the winter, but we get to engage with this as a community over the Winterage Weekend. And again, it's learning and sharing, and communities taking ownership of these things themselves. So with all that said, and conscious of time, I'm just going to touch on the work that I'm doing at the moment. So in 2018, I started an employment-based PhD, and I can tell you from day one, I had no interest in doing a PhD. My partner finished a PhD pretty much the day I started it, and I couldn't understand what the hell we were doing going through that again. But employment-based PhDs are different. So if anybody's ever thinking of doing one, I would recommend this route. It's funded by the Irish Research Council, and it just basically means I get to research Untitled, research my job. It's practical, it's kind of directly applied. It's not something that's just going to sit on a shelf in a university somewhere. And what I'm looking at is looking at community stewardship, which is this idea of communities taking action and looking after their local places through our place-based learning kind of lens, and just wondering and asking the question whether we have had an impact, whether Untitled Trust has kind of played a role in community stewardship, and then whether there's the potential to share this model with other areas. We're looking over our walls now and looking to areas beyond the Burn to see if it could kind of be replicated and what that would involve. So I recently finished up phase 1 of the project, which involved looking at 10 years of feedback forms that we had received from participants from that whole suite of programs that I've kind of spoken to you about. And we did 1,233 entries that I had to input into an Excel spreadsheet, which is great crack. And then I did an online survey of past participants as well. So people who had done some of our programs, to see what they thought. Some of the things I was working with and analysing, you know, this is an Altbheo secondary participant, enjoyed how interactive and involved it was, great variety of tasks, always fun. An Altbheo training participant who liked getting outside. So I was, you know, going through all of these to look at themes that might come out, and then also tying it with the survey results. And they're positive news to start. The people who had participated in the past definitely felt that engaging and doing these place-based learning activities definitely encourages you to get involved, take action, get involved locally. And positively as well, 93% felt that individual actions can bring about positive local change. So that's good. And then I was interested in why people got involved. Why would you take part? What pushes somebody to come out to one of our walks on a wet December or whatever it is? And the first reason was to learn, which is positive and interesting. Tells us, you know, people want to learn about their local place. But the second reason, and I think this is really important to take, is that it was enjoyable. And again, it's about looking at making these things engaging and fun and active, which is another reason that came up, that people like that it was active rather than kind of lecture style, which is, you know, what you're all being forced to sit through at the moment. You know, when you can see if it's more engaging, much more enjoyable. But also interestingly, people wanted to take action. So an acknowledgement that, you know, we want to do something locally to make positive change. And then it won't come as any surprise to you as an audience that people really positively responded to the fact that there were outdoor elements, and they were very often people's favorite piece of any of the programs that we did was the bits that were outside. Again, you know, mentioning that it was sociable was good, providing opportunities to connect, not just with your place, but with your community. But then maybe not so positively. And again, when you think about the people who this is, you know, the responses are from, these are people who have already gone out and engaged with what we're doing, and they're already interested. And even still, only 45% of them felt like they have a say in what happens in their local area, and only 23%, so less than a quarter of them, are actually regularly engaging in stewardship activities. So that leaves us with questions, and, you know, something that very much we're thinking about. Which brings me back to Blake and his model. And if we look at, you know, his barriers there in the centre, and those findings, you know, definitely this idea of practical opportunities to engage with environmental action, stewardship action, and then responsibility or lack of agency, that people don't feel maybe that they have a say and really can kind of bring about local change. And I should mention, obviously, that in terms of our participants and those figures, they're from people not just based within the Burren. So they're people from all over Ireland and other parts of Ireland as well. So one theory that we're playing with might be that, you know, the lack of kind of structures such as Altbheo provide in other areas are having an impact on the kind of ability to engage. But I'm going to kind of finish up almost with what I'm working through at the moment, is trying to come up with, if this is, you know, if these are the barriers to action, what might be a model that would kind of point to how we can encourage action. So I'm ignoring Blake, hiding him and sticking my current proposal over him. And the first thing there, and really important, is I think this idea of connection. So trying to create some meaningful engagement or connection for people with their place, whether it's through music, sport, language, environment, heritage, you know, all of these things are elements of our programs, and there are different pieces that will appeal to different members of your community, which is the next piece. Focusing on the community element, the idea of sociable engagement, allowing people to discuss and talk about these things together. Encouraging critical thinking, which is a big part of our inquiry-led kind of approach, to ask the questions, to you know, say, look, how did this come to be the way it is? To encourage considering various perspectives. So, you know, the landowner, the business owner, the tourist, the environmentalist, how that we can all come together for our places. As I've already mentioned, incorporating celebration and focusing where possible on the good things, or the things even that make our places unique. So celebrating them. And then hopefully our long-term goal, conservation. I kind of had to go, I was going to go with action, but then everything else had a C. So I said, look, we'll stick with the C theme for conservation. So it's something I'm working on and working through. But then, yes, I am going to finish on two positive notes. I think COVID-19 has shown us there's opportunity there. I think COVID-19 has forced people to engage more with local places. So I secretly rejoiced when people were confined to a 2 kilometre and 5 kilometre circle, because I thought, excellent, this is enforced place-based learning. People have to go and learn about their local place, and they did, and they got out more. And also now schools have to get outside more, because, you know, it's you know, it's safer apparently, to be outside. So, you know, there is opportunity in this moment, which is always good. And the last thing I just wanted to mention, and we often go back to these two young past participants in our Altbheo program, and we had, you know, been working with them. We work over a 9-week period, and I don't know, we were week 7 or 8, and landed back to the school, and there were all of these feathers stuck into the lawn. And, you know, I wasn't sure, was it some sort of a game or what they were doing? And they told us that actually what they are is there are orchids coming up in their lawn, because it's a Burren school. And they had marked them out so that the guy who cuts their lawns in the school would avoid the orchids. And I just thought, you know, this is something that, you know, is very practical. It's very simple, but now this school have orchids in their school lawn, in the field they play hurling on. And you know, just a small example of engaging and making it relevant and practical and small actions. So with all of that said, thank you very much for bearing with me. If anybody is interested in the research, I am looking for new communities to work with for this next phase, to see whether we could have programs kind of similar to Untitled in other parts of Ireland. Unfortunately, I know there's a few foreign attendees. I'd love to be heading off, but we have to stick to Ireland, unfortunately. There are resources available on our website. Always happy to hear from people, and just the 2 studies there that I mentioned. And thank you very much. I'm a bit over time, sorry.
No, you're grand, you're fine. Yeah, so I think just now we have some time for a bit more interaction, I suppose. So we'll just, if anybody has questions, so I think I've seen one question pop up there. So Sinead asked, Anya, what are your views on a permanent hands-on educational centre such as the Lynn Valley Ecology Society, connecting all environmental networks in each county in one place? They call them nature houses in Vancouver, Canada.
It's a great question.
I'll try and explain that actually a little bit more on you there before you actually answer. It's just so you have an idea. So basically I was based over in Canada, and one of the ideas that I wanted to kind of bring back to Ireland was kind of, you know, the idea of a nature house being placed kind of in the outdoors to actually actively engage the public through a kind of like, you know, they don't actually necessarily have to go to an actual centre to be given this opportunity. It's actually in the community itself, and it's actually a little nature house they have. It's beautiful. Like the kids walk in, they have all these hands-on, you know, like boxes where they can put their hands in and see what it is, like lichen or moss, or, you know, and the kids kind of get actively involved within the actual nature house. And I find that, say, you know, having that set up, and then also they have kind of, say, places like Lynn Valley Ecology Society where the public again can walk in and they can kind of engage with the environment in their own way and kind of learn through their own experience, but then have people kind of placed within the centre so they can kind of educate them while they're actually walking around. And I find that kind of, you know, like, I think what one of the councillors wanted to call it was an interpretive centre here in Europe and Ireland, because obviously with Canada it's different interpretations. So an interpretive centre is something that they were looking at. And I find that, you know, from my own personal experience, I find that people learn, you know, about the environment in their own way, but having it kind of hands-on and kind of have that hands-on experience, I think, is the best way, the best approach, I find, you know, because they get to actually engage with the environment and in that kind of learning aspect or that learning environment. I could be wrong though, and I'd love to hear your opinion.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thanks for the question. I have a few thoughts on it. I think actually, to some extent, you know, that model exists in some ways with the national parks in Ireland. The national parks have that as a remit, and they do have education centres in the national parks, and you know, they have that kind of approach. I worked for a while in Glenveigh National Park, and I know they have kind of huts that you can just come across and there's something going on. So that does exist to an extent. With that said, I still have a little bit of a reservation, I suppose. I worry that we there's the possibility of people thinking that you go to a national park and that's nature and that's the environment, while forgetting that actually it's all around us and it's in the field and it's in your school lawn, as I showed with those kids. And like that's part of where the place-based idea really came from, is kind of considering it from not even environment, but say from archaeology. Like I can't understand why when kids learn about Neolithic monuments in Ireland, they learn about Newgrange. Well, I can understand, it's because it's in the book. But actually, in most parts of Ireland, there are Neolithic monuments probably within 15, 20 minutes drive that they maybe don't learn anything about. So I think I totally agree with you that those kind of centres that are hands-on and interpreting rather than, allowing people engage with it at their own level and ask the questions are brilliant. But I think there's also a room for just basically getting out to the fields around your house and walking the roads and just acknowledging that this is everywhere and all around us. So place for both, I suppose.
Yeah, because I find, like, say, those kind of national heritage centres that you're mentioning are very limited. Like in Limerick alone, like there's nothing like that really around Limerick. And, I'd love to see that being brought in. Like there's a place there called the Corbally Bat, for example, in Limerick. And it's the most incredible place, but no one knows about it. Like all the residents in Limerick, no one knows that there's actually a whole forest in Limerick. And literally it's right next to our city centre and no one knows about it because there's no engagement there in terms of like Limerick particularly has no engage. Like we do have Greenleaf now and that's come in now in the last 2 years and that's been absolutely amazing. But something that's centralised so it actually gets people outside the cities to actually go into areas that are actually just right next to them in a city and learn about them. It would be lovely to see that taking place.
You need to take on to be the local hero and start engaging the local community. And I mean, that's what started here. It was just one or two people said, look, we're going to try this. We put on a few walks and see what happens. And all it takes is a couple of people and you'd be surprised who'd come along with you and, you grow the support. So I look forward to exploring that place with you.
We are getting there.
Good,
bit by bit.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks a million, Sinead, and thanks a million, Anya, for that amazing presentation. I'm aware of the time again, but I think what we might do is go for a little break, but I just have a little task for everyone to just maybe get yourselves up and moving and get away from the screen. If you have access to go outside, to go grab something green. If you don't have access to the outdoors, just grab something green. And then when we come back, hopefully everyone can just turn on their cameras and just show their little green item that they found. It's like just after, so we'll take a 10-minute break. So we'll be back at about 20 past 11 and hopefully we'll have Jed at that point. I hope he's here or he will be here, hopefully. Perfect. Thanks a million, everyone. And we'll be back in 10 minutes. All right.
$100%.
So I'm recording again. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So if you have your little green thing, can you? Nice, Mike. Love it. So I got a.
Oh, I'm not muted yet. I'm sorry.
Nice.
I need to find something green.
I try to look at everyone.
What's this one? I've missed this, so you'll have to let me know.
It's basically everyone grabbed a little green thing.
Right.
So either they went outside or grabbed something from their house. Alec, is it Alice?
Alice.
You look like you're coming out of the tree.
Yes, yeah, that's mine. The only plant. It survived in my gaff for half a year when I wasn't here. So it's a precious thing, really.
Brilliant.
It's very good.
I brought some critters along inside, so I have to take them out again.
Right. Okay. So you have like little bugs that are now currently running away from you. Oh, nice leaf. Brilliant.
Yeah, I don't want them on my laptop, so I'll be right back.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you everybody for sharing that. If nobody could turn on their cameras, you can definitely pop it into the chat if you want to share what you picked. Yeah.
I brought my little green mug as well, full of birds, all the native birds.
Nice. Cool.
It's so cute.
Is that Sinead?
Hello there.
How are you? Are you well?
This is so.
Jed, how are you?
This is so typically Irish.
I know.
That's
I know you from somewhere.
Nancy, how are you getting on? Are you well?
Oh, sure, grand. Can't complain at all.
Where in the world are you?
How are you? I'm in Limerick again. I'm sticking to my home county for this whole madness. I said I'd be around the parents. And I know the parents, the family.
It fits in well with the theme of today, I suppose, with the place-based learning, staying home, staying local.
Yeah. This is it.
Brilliant. Okay, so we'll definitely get started anyway. So I just want to introduce everybody. So to Jed Dowling, the one and only, the legend that is Jed Dowling. So we've worked together as outdoor trainers, along with Daniel as well. And so he's just going to basically give us an overview of what it's like to actually work on the FOLM project in the new model. And also his own company Terra Firma, and how he connects people with the stars. So
is that what I'm going to do? Is it?
Well, I hope you are.
I've got a whole different script, I'm afraid.
It's grand. You just roll with it, Jed. All right. So yeah, you can just share your screen anyway, and I'll hand it over to you. Thanks very much, by the way.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ovine. And I'm a little bit of a technophobe here, so I'll do what I can with it. Oh, hang on. I need to go back on there. I just practiced this as well, so hang on 1 second. I want to share my screen. That's it. Right, can you see that now?
No.
Yeah. No, you can't. Oh,
No.
Great. Great start. Hang on 1 second with me now. Share. There we go. Hang on one. Yeah. Right. So, can you see that now?
Yes. Yes, we can.
All right.
Yeah.
And did somebody go there? What am I doing? Taking my camera off. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to take my camera off as well. As you can see, I don't do many of these Zoom meetings.
Your skills are best placed in the outdoors.
Hang on 1 second now. How's it now? Come on. Actually, look, I'll leave the camera bit on. Right. On my picture there. Yeah. Right, I'm just going to stop my video because it distracts me when I'm looking at myself. All right, there we go. Right, we got there in the end. So can you hear me and can you see me, my beautiful night sky there? Can you see that? Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks. All right, so as Ovine said, my name's Jed Dowling. Nice to meet you all. And I suppose I'm an outdoor educator and one half of Terra Firma, which is a company set up by myself and my partner, Georgia Macmillan, a few years ago after we graduated from college. Yes, I am this young, right? So Terra Firma is a social enterprise, and amongst other things, we deliver training and development courses. We are involved in responsible tourism experiences, and we're involved in some local community projects. So when Ovian asked me to speak today, I seen the topic and I was like, oh yeah, definitely. Right up my street, place-based learning. And it got me thinking about the question, what is place-based learning and how is it applied in the outdoors? So I'm going to share some of that with you today, or how I see the practical applications of place-based learning in the outdoors and how I would use it personally. So before I get on to that, I'm going to go through a couple of the projects that I work on and some of the work that I do in the tourism business, if you like. And then I'm going to show you some of the feedback that we've had from some of the projects, and then I'll summarize at the end. But before I do that, I just want to ask, if you would, to indulge me. I'm going to give you a question, right? And I just want you to think about this question for a second. So I want you to think about a place in the outdoors, maybe somewhere from when you were young, and somewhere that you may go back to, somewhere that you may have visited quite a lot over time, and just think about that place. So I'll give you a few minutes just to meander that question and mull it over. All right. Are you still thinking about it? Good, right. Hold on to that thought for a while, and I'll come back to that question in a little while. But I just want to share with you that I was asked that question a number of years ago by an outdoor lecturer, and he asked me the same question, think of somewhere as a kid that you went, the memories and stuff like that, somewhere in the outdoors. And the first place that I thought about was a canal, right? But not just any old canal, it was our canal, right? And as a kid, I moved from Liverpool to a new town, a place called Runcorn, right? It was a new town that was built as, one of these developments to try and alleviate the housing crisis in the city. And for me as a boy, this place was amazing. Yeah, growing up there, it was in the countryside, trees, lakes, and that canal, the Bridgewater Canal. And we used to go down there every day as kids. We'd go down, me and my newfound mates, other kids who'd moved from Liverpool to this new town. We'd go down throughout the summer holidays. We'd jump on our bikes and we'd head down to the canal. We'd go over the other side of the canal to the willow forest, right? The little willow woodlands there. And we'd build our dens in the willow woodlands. And, we'd hang out there, no mobile phones, we'd meet up. We'd always meet at the den. Sometime throughout the day, we'd meet at the den. It was great. So look, we learned loads of stuff that summer. First summer down there, we learned that the canal was built by hundreds of men, right? Hundreds of years ago. And it was built to take goods from, the docks in Liverpool up to Manchester, and then from the places in Manchester back to the docks in Liverpool. But to us, it was a super highway. It was our super highway to adventure. We'd use the towpaths that the horses used to go along, and we'd go, we'd head off to the Bluebell Woods. We learned loads of stuff that summer. This was our place. We were learning, discovering the whole time. We learned about fish, what fish ate, different insects, where the different fish would hang out. And, we learned about friendship. We learned about swimming in a darkened canal. Yeah. And we learned about building shelters. All our mates together, and we spent the whole summer there. Loads of learning took place. But is this just nostalgia of an old man from the 70s summers growing up, going out, hanging out in these places? Well, I don't think it is, actually. I think it's a very good example of place-based learning. Yeah. So to just back this up a little bit, the Centre for Place-Based Learning and Community Engagements state this: that place-based education is anytime, anywhere learning that leverages the power of place and not just the power of technology to personalised learning. They also suggest that it's an immersive learning experience that places students in local heritage, cultures, landscapes, opportunities and experiences, and uses these as a foundation for the study of language, arts, maths, social studies, and other subjects across the curriculum. So I believe that summer we were place-based learner. Yeah, I think I learned a lot more in those first few summers than I did in my first few years in formal education. But the summer was over and it was back to the school, back to the walls and the glass and the sports field. Yeah, it was back to school. But for me, I enjoyed school. I'd met loads of new friends there who'd moved from different parts of Liverpool. And we, you know, the summer was over. We were back in school. But I thought it was good students. Always got A's in school. But I'd gone from this to this, right? I could say I was a good student. Every A's, straight A's. I'd be walking down the corridor and I'd hear, "Hey, where are you going? Hey, what are you up to? Hey, get down from there." Look, I believe place-based learning taught me a lot more than my formal education in a few years. And that's it. Got me thinking, like you say, providing kids with opportunities for free play in the outdoors and exploring in the natural environments, it's essential for healthy development. But in general, it's decreasing. And I know this from some of the projects that I've worked on. We tend to forget that, you know, this formal education that we're all, you know, involved in, it's only been around for the last couple of centuries. And before that, you know, we'd sit around, we'd learn from our elders, we'd learn from our communities, our families, we'd watch, we'd listen, we'd imitate, and we'd explore the natural and the human and the, you know, man-made world. And then we'd interact with each other. So that's some of my thoughts on place-based learning, and as I see it, or didn't realise that's what it was, but as a kid, that's how I came across it. So I want to get on to some of the practical applications. I've been lucky enough over the last few years to work on different projects, and the first one I'm going to speak about is a thing called the Compass Club. Ovine will be familiar with that. I think we worked on it together at the very beginning. And then I'm going to talk about terra firma and, you know, the dark sky stuff that you were talking about there. And then finally, I'll talk about my role with FOLM over the last couple of years. So, yeah, like I say, Compass Club. So Compass Club was a great project to be involved in at the very beginning. And it was a project that involved 6 to 12-year-old kids from the local area. And it was an after-school club that was based on strength-based learning. So it was delivered in the local woodlands. Most of the kids would have known about the woods, but they hadn't really spent any time there. And it was a perfect opportunity for that reason, like, to get them reconnected with the local environment. So we ran these programs over 6-week periods, and they ran throughout the year, and the kids would come along like rain, hail or shine, spend a couple of hours with us in the woods. And it allowed them to be part of nature, like, instead of being, you know, apart from it, that kind of thing. So most of them had never been off the paths. They knew the woods, they'd never been off the paths, they'd never really got down and deep into the woods. So to be able to allow them to get into the woods and encourage them to make shelters using the natural materials, teach them how to navigate their way through the woods and, you know, experience the changing of the flora throughout the seasons, just get off the beaten path, really. And some of this would have been after dark, because we would have, you know, brought them down in the winter time as well as the summertime. So it was an incredible adventure for them. And the research that, you know, was done to develop this course was from Godsell Education, and Emma Godsell herself. She's a child psychologist and behavioural therapist, and a father would have been in education for the last 30 years. I've just put some of the stats up there that they would have, you know, come across. And I just found it amazing when I first started reading this, when we got involved in it. You know, half of the kids would spend less than half an hour a day playing outdoors. Like, that was unheard of when I was a kid. Like, it was get out and come back when you're hungry kind of thing. And you know, the parents admitted that obviously it was less when they were kids. Nearly half the kids never been up a tree before, never climbed a tree, never walked in the forest with friends, never mind going off the path. Like, so this was all, like, you know, information that she'd, or, you know, the data they'd collected. And I just thought, well, what a chance to be involved in something that could, you know, involve them being kids again. You know, it sounds crazy, but, you know, teaching kids how to be kids. But it was, you know, it was great to be involved with that. So, and even the parents started getting involved in the adventures. So they'd tell us, you know, when they dropped the kids off there in the week, they'd say to us, we've never been down these woods before. We didn't know half these places existed. And the kids would bring them down there over the weekend, and they'd, you know, show them the shelters that they'd built, some of the nature, that art that they might have got involved in through the week. And the parents would start telling us when they dropped them off or they picked them up, how well they were doing, you know, concentration wise. Some of the kids would be a bit shy, might be a bit socially, like, you know, not great when they first came to the club. But during the periods of time that they spent with us, they were telling them how they were doing better at school, you know, that kind of thing. So it was just great. It was great to have, you know, that feedback, that instant feedback. And it was something, you know, the lack of free playing, that was something that I'd read a bit about when I was in college, and I was, you know, doing my dissertation, did a bit of research for it. But to realise firsthand that, you know, these kids from rural areas even had no real connection with their own surroundings. So it was great. It's great to be, you know, part of that and be able to, like, implement all that stuff. I suppose we were trying to encourage them to use their imagination, you know, to create their own fun, do a bit of learning whilst they were having fun. But loads of this stuff just came naturally, like problem solving, species identification, group dynamics, working as teams, you know, that kind of thing. Loads of other stuff, but all totally transferable stuff. It was great. It was just, well, a pleasure to be involved in. So I believe I could call that place-based learning, personally. One of the kids, one day, I suppose I can use his name, little Harry, he was a cracking little lad. Like, he come along this day and he said to me, it was one of the early courses, like one of the few first courses I worked on. And he said, Jed, can I climb that tree? And I went, simple answer, I don't know. And he looked at me a bit funny, like, and then I think it clicked with him. You know, I hadn't said no, and said no, and all you have to do was try. So obviously I'd done the dynamic risk assessment, made sure there was no big spikes or boulders or that underneath, and off he went. You know, so the next thing, it was just him and the tree, and, you know, him getting close to that tree, I believe a lot of learning took place in those few seconds. Those few moments that it was just him sussing out how to get up the tree, I think it was essential to his growth. And it was also essential to me. Yeah, essential because I didn't realise how such a good climber he would be, right? And if he did get up the tree and not be able to get down again, I was going to have a lot of explaining to do. So yeah, it was interesting to see, but it was great. It was great to see him just, like, getting into it and you know, being a kid. So that was the Compass Club, and I said I'm going to talk about my own company, Terra Firma, set up a number of years ago with Georgia, my partner, and it came about really once we graduated from college. And whilst we were at college, Georgia was doing her dissertation and started researching preservation of the night sky. So I think this might be another application of place-based learning. I'm going to tell you why I think that, right? Because when we first started off, Georgia was doing her research, and then this led to a kind of feasibility study, and that got me involved with doing some of the research. And through that research, it involved us skulking around after dark in remote places of the county, right? So while we were doing that, we got chatting to local farmers, local landowners, and some of them, they were great, you know, real characters and that. And they were only too happy to share stories, you know, their local stories, stuff had been passed down to them from their people, like from their ancestors over generations. So pishogues, like superstitions, legends of around, you know, the mountains that we've been going around, field names and parish boundaries, and really good information, loads of stuff that you wouldn't find in any books. Oral history, you know, real history, Irish history, passed down from person to person. And we were being educated by our elders, you know. We're in our local area, but we were being allowed to feel part of this community, and we had a real sense of pride of place. Like, it was great. So the feasibility study started coming together, and we were spending like long nights putting together an application for this dark sky park. We spoke about the people we'd met and the stories, you know, stuff they told us and the local knowledge, and, you know, how we thought this should be told and should be, you know, passed on. So we asked a few of them, you know, if they'd mind us using the stories in some of the tours that we're going to be putting together, and they were only delighted for us to use them. So we started putting together our tours, daytime tours, nighttime tours, after dark experiences. And we wanted them to be, the tours to be that little bit different. Like, so we were going to keep them local, and they were going to have an immersive feel to them. So the material that we collected was, you know, was priceless. We take people to heritage sites for stargazing sessions, and then some of the local poets that we got to know had given us poems about these locations. And so sometimes we'd recite them ourselves, and sometimes the poets themselves would come down in person and give us a recital. So it was a great tradition. We know a tradition that we thought was worth, or is worth, hanging on to. Like, and we just thought, like, you know, this is educational, informative, honest information told by the people from the area, like, who've lived, worked, and walked this land for generations. And just, in my humble opinion, like I say, this is another great example of place-based learning. So, but it also got us thinking about the stories, you know, some of the stories that they told us, and how many stories must have been lost, like, over the years. And we were inspired by something that happened in Ireland in the 1930s called the Folklore Collection. And that was, you know, they went into schools, international schools, and asked the kids to go home and collect stories from the parents. So we tried to emulate this. We went around to 26 national schools in Mayo, and we started asking the kids in the schools, did you want to come in there? We started asking the kids in the schools, like, to you know, go home, ask the parents, the grandparents, whoever, aunts, uncles, you know, if they had any stories pertaining to the night sky, stories that we might be able to use. And, you know, after a couple of weeks, we started getting emails from the teachers with stories, and then more stories and more stories. So it was great. We started collecting these stories, and what we've done is we've collected them and started collating them. We're hoping to put these into, you know, a publication and use it as part of a heritage project. And then we've also, from that, we've started these courses, like just courses for the kids, really. Any of the national schools that got involved, we go into the schools, and we've got these dark sky ranger programs. So we've used some of the stories that the kids had told us to attach them to constellations, you know, stars and up in the sky. So the kids have now got this this connection between their stories that they told us and constellations. So a real connection of their place locally and, you know, beyond. Just a little self-promo there, some of the stuff that we do as well. And then this is another project that we've, over the last couple of years, become involved in. So it's the Mayo Biosphere, or it's, you know, what we've started to put together for another application. So it's an example of a community project that we're managing now, and the biosphere itself meets the objectives that, you know, our objectives to connect people and place and harmony, and, you know, all that. So loads of opportunities with this project for place-based learning, connectivity, capacity building, and all, you know, for the local area. So a Manham Biosphere Reserve, what it does is it combines conservation, sustainable development, and education, you know, exploring the human relationship with the environment. Okay, so I'm going to move on to this beloved project that I've been lucky enough to be involved in since the beginning, I think. You know, coming over to Scotland, learning from the masters over there, and bringing some of that learning back to Ireland, and hopefully, you know, presenting some of that in, you know, representing it and being an ambassador for what Venture Trust have, you know, been doing really well for a number of years now. So, like I say, I was involved in it from the outset, and to quote some of the stuff that was said, it's a pioneering 3-phased program, and it's developed for young people aged 18 to 29 who are not currently in employment, education or training. And I'm involved in the outdoor learning phase of it. So, you know, we originally would have taken some of the participants, well, we'd have taken all of them, like all of the participants into the mountains for a 7-day, 6-night expedition. And yeah, that expedition would have involved camping each night and then moving on to a new place the next day, finding a new spot to camp. And, you know, as a challenge by choice type of program, the participants would have been carrying everything themselves. So they would have brought their own food, tents, you know, the cooking equipment, the water, clothes, all that. So quite a daunting experience, but not as daunting as being told that they had to hand the phones up on the first day. What? No snaps for the week? All that crack? Oh, that was the worst thing you could have asked. So yeah, that was the, you know, the original course, if you like, as we were delivering it back in the day, BC, before COVID. So since we've had this new challenge of restrictions and stuff, the course itself now has taken a slightly different. It's slightly different than it was. Well, it's very different than it was in all fairness. Like, but initially I was thinking, you know, delivering this course, I'm not too sure about the transition. How we're going to make it work in a more urban environment. You know, I wasn't sure that not going on this journey would it work. But just recently, I've been involved with a great team, and I believe we delivered a fantastic course the first time round down in Thurles. People were from the local area, so, you know, they knew the place, or they thought they knew the place, but it allowed us to get scratching beneath the surface and see, you know, how much they knew about it, to show us, and, you know, how much we could find out about it. So, you know, we spent the week foraging. Like, it was great. We had a great week of weather, and, you know, we were collecting elderberries, and we went off and got some rose hips, and we made some lovely elderberry syrup. And, you know, we went off up into the mountains. We used a little bit of navigation to navigate ourselves around the town. Some of the places that the lads had never been before, even though they'd lived in the town all their lives. So it was fantastic. You know, it was great to be able to, I suppose, change the model up a little bit. And, you know, yeah, it was definitely was place-based learning. So I suppose we didn't know how it was going to work. I think the feedback spoke for itself, though. It was a very small course. There was only 5 people on it, and one of the lads on it that had Down syndrome, right? Fully inclusive. The course is fully inclusive for everyone. So this lad really wanted to be involved in the course. And after the course, we got some really lovely feedback from his mum. I've put it up on the screen there because I think it really encapsulates what the course is about. All inclusive, helping people to get engaged. And, you know, you can read it there for yourself, but I'm going to take a bit of pride in reading it out. So thank you most sincerely for including my son on the course. Yeah. Apart from the normal challenges of living with Down syndrome, he's suffered from depression over the last couple of years as he struggled to find his place in the community after leaving school. So thank you for focusing on his strengths, for giving him the tools to move forward in his life, and for the continued online support and connections. It's been one of those life-changing experiences for both of us. And honestly, I think that just, you know, sums the course up for me. loads of the feedback that I've had from people in the past is basically said this, you know, it's given them opportunity, it's recognised their strengths, and it's allowed them to be part of a society that sometimes, you know, they're excluded from, or they don't feel fully engaged with, or that. So again, I think that's a bit of place-based learning, and I'd just like to go back. I said I was going to go back, so I think I'd like to go back to, you know, your special place. And, you know, what did your special place teach you? Did it teach you anything? Did it influence you? Did it influence you to respect your environment? And has it helped you shape your values? Do you consider that to be place-based learning? And I think that's me, John. I don't know if my video is back on or...
It is, we can see you.
Here I am. So I had another slide somewhere that said, if you've got any questions for me, I'll happily try to answer them. I know it's supposed to be 40 minutes, but sitting here listening to me waffle on for half an hour, I think you've done well already, so thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks a million, Jed, for that. That was incredible just to see the progression almost of the different types of place-based learning that's happened in Ireland and is currently happening in Ireland. And it certainly gives me great hope to know that place-based learning is happening, and this is just an opportunity to show it off and to say that, you know, there is great things happening in Ireland. We just need to connect more people together, for this. So yeah, does anyone have any questions? So I'm just looking. Yeah, Sinead.
Jed, hello there again. I'm always asking questions.
Good, I'll try and answer them.
I never stopped, Jed. Thank you so much, and actually thank you to Anya as well. I never actually got to say to her. The two of you guys, thanks a million for the presentations. They're absolutely gorgeous, and it's really nice to come back to, because I've lived over in Canada for 2 years, and it's nice to come back to Ireland again and to see the progression that Ireland has actually achieved over even the short space of a couple of years. It's really nice to see that and see where we've come since our course. So since we started, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Jed, is I'm actually starting a company down here in Limerick myself called Mud and Bud Eco School.
Mud and what, sorry?
Mud and Bud.
Oh, nice, love it.
Yeah. It's got a rhyme, isn't it? I love the old rhyme, so I do. But I love the idea, and I remember when you first came out with the company, and I was like, everything about it was just absolutely incredible. Like, just to actually be able to, bring people outdoors and actually educate them about what they don't generally see, like say being outdoors at nighttime. Do you know, like, as in, you never get that anywhere. Like, you never get that, like, to be in Mayo and somewhere that's so encapsulating. It really does encapsulate your whole idea of being outdoors at nighttime, and having that as the concept for your business is absolutely incredible. I think it's very, forward thinking as well. Especially in an age where
not everyone would agree with that, Sinead. We're in the west of Ireland after all, so like cloud cover can be a bit of a problem. So people kind of laughed at us and went, "What, you want to do stargazing in the west of Ireland?" It's not really about the stargazing. That's the hook, right? It's getting people out. It's making that connection with the lands. But yeah, thanks for being so.
Yeah, because I think it is like the concept of it is like, say, the one thing I find with Ireland with that cloud cover as well is that you have those moments in Ireland where you get to see the stars. Do you know, like, as in, like, and they're the moments. It kind of, it kind of, how would I explain it? Daniel is brilliant at explaining things. Daniel, I tell you, you're a man of the words. Like, I just think you're a man of the words. I don't know how you manage it at all, but you just seem to sum up everything so beautifully. Fair play to you. But I just find that being like having that one moment of the stars kind of there's the word encapsulates again, but it kind of it tells you, kind of say that there's only one moment in life that you have with the outdoors, one moment that will teach you and set you apart in terms of going forward, in terms of the outdoors. And that one moment can completely change your whole life. Do you know, it completely inspires you to do things. And as Daniel said, that So, you know, sorry, going back now to yourself, Jed, like that's what kind of these companies are, though, Joe, in Ireland, the companies that are set up by people like ourselves. They're, you know, they're companies that are full of spirit and full of, you know, true beauty. And I think that's like, when you look at all the different kind of companies spread out around Ireland, these outdoor education companies, you know, that are being set up by people like yourself, Jed, you know, you can really see the beauty, the kind of the inspiration behind it, you know, and the passion, and even through the logo and everything, and through the whole idea of the company. So thank you so much for what you're doing in Mayo. That's
it's my pleasure. It really is my pleasure, because I wasn't always afforded the opportunity to be involved in this type of stuff. I done the same, you know, left school and went looking for money, work, you know, that's all I wanted to do. So I worked in civil engineering for like, you know, 20 odd years, and I feel really blessed that I'm able to create opportunities, or help to create opportunities. So it's fantastic. And that's why we've moved the structure to a social enterprise, because we want to create more of those opportunities, and, you know, and just as you said there, let people, you know, just, you know, be in the outdoors, like, you know, anyway, yeah, I'll ramble on.
So I just know you're grand. I'm just gonna pull it back, because we have Eula has raised her hand, and I also have a question from Phil. So
sorry,
Eula,
I can go on.
I know we all could. It's something we're very passionate about. So why not?
I know it's hard, isn't it?
So Eula, like a class reunion here. So thank you, Jed, for those different aspects and projects you've been talking about. And I like, you know, from having heard Daniel and, I'd say it wrong, Anya.
Yeah.
So starting to see in this session kind of different elements of place-based learning, and how it's in which ways it's valuable. So the cognitive learning and technical skills of navigation, and the connection to the community around that's there, and the social community that we bring in, and the past of it, the past use of the lands, and the past community, and that, and the physical engagement and the emotional engagement. So all these paths are so important, and make place-based learning valuable for mental health and well-being, for cognitive learning. You know, you mentioned attention and all of that. Yeah, and I like how we're bringing these bits together, and showing that everyone in itself is valuable, and the more we can connect of those, the bigger the impact is. And I think the story, you know, the projects you mentioned are fantastic, good practice examples for those. So just saying
well, I hope they are good examples, and I hope, you know, that people see, you know, my tenuous links between them anyway, because that stealthy learning, I think, is much stronger learning. If you sit people, like I said at the beginning, I was sat down in a school and it was unnatural to me. I didn't do well with the four walls and the glass box, you know, and that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. So, you know, if we can bring learning in, and it's stealthy stuff, and, you know, people don't realize that they're actually learning, and then they go away and they've got all these memories, then that to me is like powerful stuff, like, you know. And I think, you know, that's why I really love outdoor education in that respect. You know, you can find those strengths, and, you know, capitalize on them strengths rather than focusing on the negatives. And I think in that school, it's not, you know, everything can't be learned through the outdoors, you know, but a lot of things can. So I mean, bringing that classroom in the outdoors, to me, is, you know, for some people, it's what works. And, you know, it's great, and it's great to be able to be part of that. So for me to do it in different applications, and to be able to bring it into our tourism products, I mean, we're teaching people and they don't even know. It's great.
Jed, I have another question here from Philip. So thanks, Jed. Yeah. Do you see much difference between place-based learning with kids and with adults?
Yes and no. Kids are obviously less inhibited when they're allowed to be. So when they're just, they want to learn, they're a lot more curious. I think we get our curiosity beaten out of us through the school system. And I think our curiosity, as Ken Robinson put it, is killed by education. Do you know what I mean? So our creativity and our curiosity can be dampened. So a lot of the time, you know, adults feel a little bit inhibited by, you know, this place-based learning. And that's why after dark experiences really work. People lose their inhibitions in the dark, right? People open up a lot more in the dark. So whether that's sitting around the campfire, or whether that's walking shoulder to shoulder, or whether that's just standing in awe of the stars, right? People tend not to be as inhibited when they're in those environments, right? So the after dark experience with adults seem to work better. Much of a difference, I don't know. I think people, if they're willing to learn, will learn. So yeah, I think we're curious by nature as a species. We're curious. So, you know, all we can do is provide the environment for the learning to take place, and then, hey, let the magic happen.
Amazing, Jed. Thanks a million. And I just like to put a thought, my own personal thought, because I was on a place-based learning course there 2 weeks ago, and that was with all adults. And
Right.
so, you know, personally, I just saw that people would be a bit nervous and shy at the start. You know, you know, they were like, oh, I have to sit and listen to, I had to make a noise map, you know, sitting in a forest and then listening to where all the different parts were. And people were a little bit nervous about it, but then, you know, once you get into it, you know, adults do open up as well. So, you know, and I think even with FOLM, you know, we are working with adults as well. So it is young people, you know, they are all over 18. So, you know, I think it works just as well. I think all of us are genuinely children at heart, you know, and we have that natural curiosity to explore the environment and the world around us. So I think it's just important to keep that little spark alive. And I think outdoor education certainly helps it, and especially through place-based, you know, it's a learning about your own place in the world, and that connection with it. So we are 3 minutes.
Evine,
yeah.
do you know when you were saying there about kind of say, like, I remember we brought a group of adults down and we taught them stream ecology, and they were learning about, like, you know, like stoneflies and mayflies, and like their minds literally were blown. They were like, oh my God, is this in the water? And I was like, yeah, it is in the water. Do you know, so like, you know, adults have that, they haven't been given that opportunity to learn about all those things as well as ourselves. You know, they haven't been given those little opportunities. So some of them, not everyone, like, but some people haven't. And no matter if our kids or adults, they'll still find that inspiring, like, as in that'll open up their whole mind again. It's the creativity, as you said, like, it's just, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, like, it's just that it goes back to the inquiry based kind of idea of the outdoor education, because, you know, you're letting somebody experience the environment for themselves. So, you know, you're not driving the questions, they're just in an environment and they're asking the questions, going, oh, I wonder where that came from, or what's the meaning of that place name, or do you know, so it all comes happens. It naturally happens, and that's what I suppose the magic of the outdoors has for everybody.
Exactly.
So I'm very aware, thank you Sinead again for that question.
But
I'm just going to our next speaker is Stephen Hannon. So he's from Galway Mayo Institute of Technology, and they have vast experience in outdoor education. And so I'm really excited to hear Stephen talk about it. And thank you so much for joining us today. So I'll hand you over to Stephen. Stephen, I think you're on mute.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Ovin, and hello everybody. Delighted to speak at this webinar. A very interesting topic, and hopefully I can share some of the ideas we've developed here. I'll try and share my screen there. Hopefully it'll come up first time. Is that sharing?
No, not right now.
Okay, just check.
Yeah, it's coming up now.
Oh, great. Let's see if it stopped sharing on mine. No, we're back again. Is that still sharing yet? Hopefully.
Working, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. So yeah, I decided I'd call my contribution Knowing My Place. And what I've tried to do is put together a journey of ideas, because I haven't arrived at the pedagogy of place or place-based learning sort of all the time. I've been working in the outdoors for a long time, but that hasn't always been my approach. And I suppose I would now call it very much part of my approach. So I wanted to explain how I've got there. And in getting there, I just want to acknowledge that all these ideas aren't my own. I've been really heavily influenced by my colleagues here, Gio, Orla, Pauline, Davy, that I work with, also by my students, some of whom have given me particularly good techniques and ideas, and especially last year during COVID, and some of the people I've worked with like Mick O'Driscoll and Leo Hallisey. I just want to acknowledge them because I'm not claiming any of the things I'm about to say are particularly mine. I was going to start with a map. I think Anya mentioned the love of maps earlier, and when I was looking for a map of Mayo, I just wanted to explain again with the same idea about the importance of place and where I was from. I came across this map. It's an ancient map of, I suppose, Ireland, England, and parts of Europe. And I was just looking at it, and I realized when I was looking at it and I was trying to indicate where GMIT was based, I noticed this island here. I found this very curious because I know there's no island there. And I looked into it a little, and I heard it was High Brazil. And it's an imaginative area that people believed was there outside in the Atlantic as they stared out to sea. And it really brought it back to me that, you know, place is a literal area, but it's also a mixture of imagination and feelings and uh, experiences and what we project into places. So I thought this was very curious. This is a map from 1540, and the imagination was so strong that they've given a visual representation of a place that doesn't exist, so much so that it's bigger than the Isle of Man there in the map. I think sometimes when we're talking about place, it's kind of hard to, we've been talking about connection, and it's hard to put words on that connection. I thought during the talk I might lean a little on some poets, and this little line of poetry here is from Amergin, who was allegedly the first poet and lawmaker of the original Irish people, the Milesian or Gaelic people. And when he, and again, it's in Irish, it's in ancient Irish, and he says, am gui imwer am trun trehen am fuan mara, am wind on sea, am waves swelling, am ocean's voice. What caught my imagination when I saw this first was he doesn't really distinguish between himself and nature, that nature and wildness and wilderness isn't something that's separate and out there. He is the wind, he is the ocean's voice. And I thought that was a nice one to think about. This is just a slide from yesterday. We're out all yesterday. And what I'm trying to do is connect ideas here on the journey through this talk. It's a journey of ideas. So moving on, this just a good excuse really to show beautiful North Mayo where we're confined within the moment. And this is a trip we did yesterday from Ballina, North Mayo to Killala, down by the seashore, the North Sea, the north coast of Mayo. And along the way, like it's just such a rich archaeological environment. There's so much different. There's mud flats full of feeding birds, etc., and the first of the arriving birds. So it's very much almost an immersive experience. And I thought it'll be worth mentioning just a little bit of an aside here that I think these experiences are so important for young people now. I listen to the news about COVID, and that age group, college-going age group, are never really mentioned. They can continue online. I think it's so important to have this social, physical, sensory connection to place as part of experiences. I think it's really important for our mental health and very existence. And during that journey, I was trying to piece together, as we paddled, piece of the talk for today. And I was thinking, well, what is this outdoor education thing we do? Is the place just an interchangeable backdrop, just a wallpaper behind us, that it's more what we're technically doing with our paddle, what grade of climb we're climbing? Are these the important bits? And I was thinking, No, not really. And as I was paddling, I was coming up with a very loose definition for today about what I think place-based education is, and outdoor education as part of that. I thought really it isn't about the technical, it isn't about the skills of navigation or the skills of paddling or rock climbing, or it's about creating an empathy, especially with our natural environment, an intimacy almost that came across in that poem. And I think how can we do that as well when we are paddling? And part of that is sensory, and part of it is through story. I was very interested to see the strong place of story in one of Jed's applications. I think it's the door into connection. I think with landscape is the human aspect, and knowledge too. Like ecology is a very important part of our course, and whereas Anya pointed out that knowledge of the environment doesn't cause behavioral change, I think a little bit of knowledge and that emotional connection together can help drive some connection to nature. I suppose the why, why are we at what we're at? And I think it's really important to have a why. And for me, that is about creating a connection to place, a sense of belonging. And I threw in this additional word, longing. And I'll come back to that with the very last slide. Again, I was enriched by a student example, a student from last year, Patrick McConaughey from Donegal, just gave me insights with his examples. And then a sense of, if we have that belonging, we have ownership, and from ownership, hopefully we have this care and protection of your patch, the bit you like. And of course, if we all had that, we could do great things. So as part of this journey, I was just going to take you back a little, not quite as dramatic an example as Jed's, but I just wanted to talk about my early childhood and being very lucky to get an early connection, but also immediately feeling a sense of why. I remember sometimes being a bit reluctant. Oh, you can go for a walk today. You're going up a walk, and your father's going to bring you uphill walk. And I was thinking, oh no, not today. I'm watching Champion the Wonder Horse on telly. And why now? Oh, it's good for you. You'll feel great after you come back. I just felt sometimes that the why wasn't that obvious, and I suppose that why thing has become part of my journey of ideas through why do we do the stuff we do, and what's behind it. And I find my own grown-up kids are sometimes asking me the same questions when I feel something's particularly good for them. So when my life was dominated by the technical and the physical nature of outdoor education, I planned with others this trip to Guinea-Bissau in West Africa. And until I arrived, my head was just full of, what food to bring, how are we going to solve water filters, what are we going to wear? But when I arrived, I just had this moment of insight. We met these fishermen out there, very, very little English. But I began looking at my activity through the eyes of particularly the younger man in the front of the fishing vessel. And just, what am I doing? What am I doing here? What's the purpose of what I'm doing? I suppose I began seeing the oddness of the practices that have become outdoor education from someone who was totally unfamiliar with this luxury of recreation, of going out into the outdoors for no practical purpose. So I felt that feeling of dislocation from the environment, and this comparison between what I was doing and what I could see in front of me. So I decided to go back to college and did a master's, and this was way back in '99. And at the time, it was as if fate has conspired to help me along. The Irish curriculum suddenly introduced outdoor education as part of physical education in the primary school and in the lower levels of the second level or post-primary. I thought this was wonderful. So I went around asking teachers, where has this come from? Were you part of this? And asked various experts in education, and nobody could tell me where this had come from. I started just Googling things and looking for other examples. And I found, shockingly or not, well, I was a bit taken aback that the outdoor education in England was very, very similar, except for one word. And this caught me onto the idea, hey, is this important that you can just take a system from another country? How important is it that ideas develop organically and grow with teachers' contributions? Now, I'm not saying that we should be very parochial and closed, because we've taken on great ideas from Finnish education and Montessori and from everywhere, from the forest schools, from the UK and Germany. And it's really enriched what we have. But I was just thinking, how important is it to link our educational practices back into the context, culture, and landscape from whence they've come? So I began thinking, and this thinking happened after I'd finished my master's, because I was tweaked by this idea and kept it to the forefront. And then I began noticing things in people's research, like this Chris Loynes, and he is saying that when you take ideas from another place, you take values with them. And a lot of outdoor education in the early days was about preparing young people from war. So he was saying, hey, be careful. You might be taking things you didn't intend to when you just adopt practices from a different place. And Robbie Nicol, who's in the University of Edinburgh, he was saying in the few years after I'd finished my master's, he was saying, like, a lot of these practices are full of a legacy of prescribed conservatism. Be careful what you're taking again. And then in Australia, and then I was thinking, I really related to this, because they were saying that if you don't think about what you're taking on, that you'll just end up with a sort of a McDonaldized version of outdoor education that's not place specific. It's just a series of activities, of practices with no link to their place. And they introduced this idea that it was like a neo-colonialism, that they felt they were still being influenced by ideas from abroad that were making them blind to the rich local Aboriginal context in Australia, and that they just ignored the geographical historical difference between these various places. And I suppose that if you do this, you end up ignoring, you take on this maybe a tradition, a colonial tradition of looking at landscape as empty, empty of history, empty of natural and cultural significance. So I said, oh, I'll run with this and see how it applies to Ireland. So I thought very simple, looking back at the Celtic calendar and all the great traditions we have of spiritual links from holy trees into a otherworldly spiritual existence underneath the landscape. Links to the Bealtaine festival, links to wells, the idea of wells emerging from beneath the real landscape from the spiritual landscape, bringing wisdom and insight from beyond. And I suppose just here in Mayo, what you call it, Crowpatrick, and the links to pilgrimage and connection to landscape, and through maybe a touch of hardship in the landscape as we walked up the hills. And I began, seeing how much of this we can incorporate into what we're doing, and maybe making practice in Ireland a little more reflective of I suppose the place in which we were based. And there's just a picture from last year. One of our students, excuse me, Jaggy, talking through some of the local mushrooms here and educating the earlier year groups, the first year group. And here is a picture of a reenactment of the great return of Usheen from Tiernan from that mystical land back to the real landscape. And as he gets down off his horse to help, he gets turned back into an old person. So just trying to reenact aspects of the landscape. And again, this is from last year, Cormac leading us as the boats carrying the Fair Bullock, came ashore to fight the Tuatha De Danann, and just creating a bit of excitement. And as Orla, my colleague, calls it, what we're really at is recreating in a cultural landscape. I thought, this is it, we're sorted, end of journey, end of I search for ideas, we're done. We're done here, our work is done, we've finished. And we've done other things. We've got a very successful early childhood course, and then we began running events trying to connect, especially the early childhood, young children, to the landscape. And I noticed I was helping out in these rather than leading them. Two colleagues, Mary and Davy, were leading out in these. It gave me an opportunity to sit back, and I just noticed the same parents and same kids were coming along. I had this feeling that, hey, we're preaching to the converted here. There's a whole group of the population that we can't reach with our message of pedagogy of place. And I took this picture this morning, and it made me think, that this is just my neighbor's wall. He's unlikely to see this. And in my journey, I just envisaged there's like a little roadblock. I don't know how you explain this. Maybe people might put a few ideas into the chat box. And like this, my neighbor has poured some, I don't know, some version of weed killer, and has controlled this part of nature, and takes great pleasure in knocking out any aspect of life here. I was just thinking there's something going on here about connection to landscape, but that it isn't universally connected. And there's a mixture of orientations and feelings within us that maybe we're not reaching everyone. And I've sort of taken a few influences. There's a very funny podcast by Blind Boy, and he calls it Chucky Our Lawn. And it's this idea that the way we're relating to landscape now is as a result of our colonial past, and we've sort of taken on board that this idea that we need perfect lawns and perfect landscape and don't really relate to it. We've taken a step back. We're looking at it from a remove. And I started thinking about, because I live in rural Ireland, and I am an outsider to rural Ireland, even though, like Anya, I've been living longer in my new place than where I was born. And I sort of picked up from Ted Hughes, the poet, this idea of being exiled from nature, and sort of a war on nature from some time, sort of part of our relationship with nature. And there's some writing that the famine might have impacted on our relationship to nature, and how, as one writer called it, that the land was seen as our data bank of humiliation, that the land had let us down, and we were now maybe bitter to it, against it. And here's a book that another colleague, Sean Lysett, showed me, and it's a journey through Mayo by early visitors from the UK, Mr. and Mrs. S.C. Hall. And it's bringing the sublime and the beautiful, looking at landscape in a very romanticized way. This is Delphi. It's unrecognizable because it's been pumped up. It's been kind of made bigger. But at the same time, the writer says that, they love the glen, but in the middle of it, there's a house, a small house. And though it's exceedingly simple, it disturbed the perfect solitude of the place. And this caught me, and it reminded me of the, what would you call it, the writings from Australia, that there was a push that landscape should be empty, and that the human in the landscape was a kind of a disturbance, and relates back a little to what Anya was saying about Untitled, that it's living because of the people, and it's this interaction of person and landscape is very important, because we can't preserve it as an empty place. I just thought that, within us there's these two truths, and I was reminded of the poet, Patrick Kavanagh. I thought he helped articulate this idea that I was trying to grasp, but this other way of looking at landscape. And he writes this poem talking to his soil. "O stony grey soil of Monaghan, the laugh from my love you thieved. You took the gay child of my passion and gave me your clod conceived." And he goes on, and there's an almost bitterness. "And you flung a ditch on my vision of beauty, love, and truth. O stony grey soil of Monaghan, you burgled my bank of youth." There's sort of an ambiguous relationship here to nature that I'm trying to get at. That, you know, an unromantic view. And I think, well, so why am I mentioning this? I think if we are to go beyond preaching to the converted, we have to try and understand this other aspect of relating to landscape and um, connect it to it. This is Ackle again in Mayo. And what I found very interesting, a writer from Maynooth here, a sociologist, was saying that as an outsider, perhaps me as an outsider to where I'm living, the things that I think are beautiful about nature, its wildness and simplicity and primitivism, can be seen internally as conditions of social conditions and part of the stresses and contradictions of living in a colonial society. Apologies for the complicated quote there. But you know, I think all is not, there's, I think it's, what I'm trying to do is acknowledge that how we relate to landscape isn't simple, and that both of these things can be true at the same time. You know, two truths sitting beside each other within the one person. I see this like every year going up Crowpatrick, you know, 30,000 people, and you know, they're holding a total connection to the landscape, an inherent connection to the landscape, living in the area and making this annual pilgrimage part of their relationship to landscape. And I suppose the great writer Tim Robinson, who unfortunately, sorry, passed away during COVID, had a great way of describing when he was trying to map the landscape and make, I suppose, make explicit the connections people had and had lost in the mapping process, which were mapped originally in colonial times to our landscape. He said, I thought it was a great phrase, when he was making the maps, he felt it was like catching people, turning them upside down and shaking out their memories, shaking out how they had once connected to land. It reminded me when Jed was talking about his stories and, you know, bringing these back, and in his case, mapping them visibly there and catching the old, um, I suppose the old archaeological sites and the place names, the Luganum, each one explaining a place. But then I said, little diversion here before I finish. I was looking for other examples across the world where people had, I suppose, in connected to landscape and, you know, built on organizations that did that. And I was very interested, always have been, in the Irish language, and we tried to bring in things like um, examples from the Fíneachta, where Fionn McCool would challenge his tribe to run through the forest without breaking a stick. And I thought that was a great activity that we tried to incorporate in barefoot walking. And I was looking for examples elsewhere, and I came across this example in the UK about the kindred of the Kubu Kift, and an unusual name, a slightly eccentric group. But there's a lot of wonderful practices they had of, they felt it was really important to connect to the earth, and they associated a lot of the industry that had taken off in the 1930s as being very corrosive to how people related to their landscape and their land and their identity of being, in this case, British. And I was thinking, oh yeah, this sounds good, you know. And, you know, they had slightly unusual practices, but alongside them, similar. And this group, the kindred of the Kibu Kift, eventually became the Green Shirts and became involved with other groups. You might recognize him from Peaky Blinders. Actually, his name just escapes me. Someone type it into the chat box there. But that if you go too much into this connection to the earth, and there is a tiny danger that we would be excluding in how we connect to landscape. you know, that I think it's really important that our landscape is a landscape for all Irish people, for new and old. And like in our fourth year now, 40% of our students aren't born in Ireland. We've Dutch, Belgian, German, English, Czech. And I think this is good. Like, this is going to help enrich and bring new connections to what we already see. And it's great looking at the landscape through their eyes. So just coming towards the end now and trying to bring all this together in what is outdoor education. You know, it's the activities, it's the social, the environmental and the cultural, and bringing all that together in maybe this diagrammatic version. And I thought I'd end with, I said I'd end with this thing that I got directly from my students. The idea was given to me by another student, a German student called Martina, and she was saying, you know, about connecting to place and memory, a bit like Jed had mentioned, and about special trees. And we started, I set an assignment to build up little videos, and I added to this with Simon Beam's work about journeys through nature, and I got students, I hope this is a video, hopefully it'll.
There's no sound, Stephen, just in case.
Have I lost you there?
I think the video wasn't.
Oh, right.
Wasn't
Okay.
playing sound.
That was my last slide anyway. Could I just, I'll just take 2 seconds just to explain what he is saying. That was Patrick from Donegal, and we've taken on this idea of just doing a journey through your area. And what I thought was particularly good here is I'd asked them, well, as a borrowed idea from Simon Beams, to go into their environment with questions and then to go and find out the answers to these. But by asking, and well, sorry you couldn't hear this, he was talking to his grandmother about the area. And what is amazing is he came up with so many different things he never knew about. He was in his 2K area and he never knew about where this priest had been killed during the penal times, and where there was a shebeen, right up to modern history about the Troubles, etc. And this storied landscape, and you could just feel how he had reconnected to it. And I'll end there. Thanks very much. I think I've lost my screen here a bit, so I'll see if I can find you again. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Stephen, for that. So does anyone have any questions? You can pop it in the chat or ask. But like I'm actually, just even from my own research, because I did about the Irish language and place-based education. And one thing I came across in my research was, you kind of touched on it there earlier, Stephen, was the insider and outsider outlook, and that difference. So the case study I did it on was Cloiste Ishka up in Mayo, and the difference between people who came into the area. So I would be, you know, you're known as the blow-in if you're not local to the area, but so I would be a blow-in to the Belmullet Peninsula, and it was so interesting to, you know, the way I would view the landscape, and then there was people who had lived there for, you know, years. So they had a lot of the stories and everything. But then it was like when two people came together, so an insider and an outsider of the same, you know, looking at the same place, it was amazing the type of discussions that could be brought about. So yeah, I'm just wondering if you've seen that elsewhere, I suppose.
Yeah, no, and why I went on that slight diversion is I think we have to interrogate that idea of the insider outsider and challenge ourselves by I suppose developing a more inclusive pedagogy of place that includes insiders and outsiders, and sometimes both that perspective can be in the same person. So it is,
Yeah.
it's not, but I think sometimes, well, I found when we were working and admitting our failures here that we were getting a lot of easy wins and inviting the same parents and their children back in. And we weren't reaching out to, there was a whole element of Irish society that weren't at those early childhood days in nature. So that's what got me thinking about it. And then just, I suppose, to be inclusive and in our attempts to make our pedagogy off the place, to make sure that we don't go to an extreme and make it exclusive to New Irish. And
yeah, and I think a lot of people can learn, stories about a place, even if you've never been there before. You can still research and look into a place, and it can provide a new lens to look at something. So Eula, you have your hand up there.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much, Stephen. That was, my head is full and I'm still processing all of that, because just so many different things, and a lot of that also connects to some of the philosophical and practical questions that I'm exploring, like with my work. And one thing that I'd like to, kind of an association I had, I've been thinking about that before, is there's different connections. So in this group here, we're seeing our connection with the outdoors as something very, very positive and enriching, and that. And you touched on like the younger person in that canoe, the fisherman, and also the ambiguity of the poem of the farmer, where I think, like, yes, we see in people who, like, if you have to live off the land, and both in Ireland and in Scotland, where I live at the moment, is like, that's hard. And so then it's not just fun, and it's not just, all the flowers and the festivals and that. That's life and death, and it's really, really hard work that wears your body down and all of that. So I think, that ambiguity of it. Oh, there's a little one coming to see Mike. And at the same time, the people, and part of my family is from a farm as well, so I have that lived experience as well. Is like, you have such deep and strong connection and to the land that's so much more a part of your identity than if you just do it for recreational purposes, go outdoors. So there's kind of an unfinished thought process there, saying like, well, where's the good, where's the critical parts in that, and what, in terms of looking at outdoor education, outdoor learning, what is the bit or the level or the quality that we want to achieve? I'll leave it at that, just to share that. And again, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. No, thank you very much.
Jed, do you want to ask a question there? You're on mute.
There we go. And I didn't know where that hands up button was. So,
so you just put up your hand.
So I just put my hand up. I was looking for it. Stephen, thanks. That was brilliant and really passionate as always. But just something that you touched on about the Irish language. And if you haven't guessed, I'm not from the west of Ireland. Right. There's a little hint. I put it at the start of me talk there, but just the Irish language and sense of place and being part of that place, And when I first came to Ireland, I didn't grow up with Irish, so I started noticing place names, maps, and that always fascinated me anyway. But looking at the place names and being able to make the connection between just the land itself, the topography, and why the place was called that. For instance, Carrantoul. Like, why is Carrantoul Carrantoul? And I was like, oh, when I started breaking it down, the upturned sickle, and you look at it, or the upturned hook, like when you look at it, that's exactly what it is. So that started getting me really enthused about, place names and why they're called this. I mean, the first place I moved to was Lismore, the Gaelic Liss, from that enclosed place, the ring fort, and more from the big. So the big fort was there, and I was like, oh, this is great. So ever since then, I've had that, when I go to places, I love to know about the place names and, take that on board. And I think if we started, I don't know if it is taught in the primary schools or that, but I was trying to encourage it when I'm working with the younger people, because even though if people have the Irish language, it's not necessarily about the place, you know. So trying to encourage that, I think, is, like you say, it's it's a fantastic thing to do. I just thought I'd chip in with that because but thanks.
Yeah, thanks a million. And yeah, just even following on from that thought, Jed, like I'm a big believer in the Irish language and the the lens through which it can create and open up a whole new world of understanding for people. Like being able to understand, if the word tubber, it means that there's a well around, or the Irish people were very descriptive in the way that they seen the land. And if they saw it, one of my favorite ones is the Irish mountain Ton Lagee. So broken down, it means Tone Lagee, which means arse to the wind. So it's a very bulbous mountain and it's quite windy up there. So it's funny and it's insightful, and if you miss those little bits of insight into that language, you can almost skip over the names of the place. I know Michael Cronin he was giving a talk there about Irish and ecology and how Dublin, there's a lot of the Irish names have that connection to the land or to the water source. So Dublin is Blackpool, but if we're getting rid of all the Irish names, we're losing that connection and that sense of place to the area. So yeah, it is a big thing to have.
Absolutely, and that's what I think is quite important. It gives you a description of the land. Often it gives you a description of the landscape. So if you start incorporating that, and you really bring that connection in with the human and the land again. So we, like the British, when they came here and started doing the mapping, a lot of that was lost. And like you say, there's a lot of translations that have been translated back and then backed away again. Some of them, some of them just for pure senses of amusement,
like
the devil's mother. Sorry,
Sinead, I know your hand is up. Can we hold your question? Because we just have one more speaker. So I think Joanna, if she's here. It's just CIE, so that's the partner over the FOLM project over in Poland. So just to make everyone aware that it's also happening in Spain and in Poland as well. So Joanna's here, and it's just to give you a little bit about the European perspective of the project and what's happening over in the rest of Europe. So Joanna.
Hello. Thank you very much for having this meeting, and also for inviting us to be part of it. Yes, we are very excited that the education in the natural environment is happening thanks to FOLM in 3 countries, Ireland, Poland, Spain, and that the Norwegian funds and allowed us to benefit from great experience and knowledge of our expertise partners. Nuala Hillman from the University of Edinburgh, and I know Mike is here also from Venture Trust, but the whole staff from Venture Trust, so we're getting huge support. But also we are being examined in terms of the effects the project has on all of us, so not just participants but also trainers and us all. And to tell you from my side, it's a wonderful experience. I'm really glad to, of course, meet great people and learn a lot, and just having this opportunity to see how it works in the natural environment of 3 countries. It's really been amazing, but also to see the effects outdoor education has on the participants. It's really just great because it shows that the idea is universal. This is a core issue for all human beings, that we are embedded in the natural environment, and unfortunately we tend to forget about this. To give you more of a European perspective, of course, I need to address, as other speakers have done, the issue of COVID. I think that it gives us an opportunity to look back at what we are missing in terms of education, and for sure the environmental connection has been lost throughout the centuries of learning, and maybe, hopefully, we can use this opportunity of examining the situation that we experience in all countries affected by COVID. Yes?
Joanna, your sound just dropped, at least for me, but I suppose, so did you change anything a minute ago?
No.
Okay, so we just come closer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Come closer.
Yeah. I'll make it good. Let's see, like this now. Okay, is it better?
Yeah, that's okay. Well.
Okay, so we really hope that especially decision makers will look at the opportunity the online education is giving us, and then find a space for outdoor education to be there as well. We think that as much as knowledge transfer can use new solutions in terms of digital transfer, but still we need to know why we are in the environment we live in, and how we should benefit during the learning process. So just to give you an example, we have produced this document with Dr. Jula Hildman just a few months ago, that referred to how much we can use the possibility of online training and learning, giving space to environmental experience, which is necessary and very beneficial for the youth as well as for grown-ups. So this is just to refer to COVID, and I think we really should have this at the back of our minds. In terms of the European perspective, we also have a very important Green Deal, and also funds attached to it, but in general, the concept of having more discussion and then more actions oriented at society's attachments to the environment and the responsibility we all bear. So in these terms, we really hope that projects like FOLM can be brought into light and become natural part of the educational system. We have seen this in the project we are running right now, and in several others as well, that once we have participants enjoying the nature and learning in the natural environment, they naturally understand much more what is the impact we all have on the environment, and what can we all do to diminish this impact, or have it as less as possible, of course. So we think that all projects and all curricula that bring students, but also grown-ups, closer to the environment, to the natural environment, are very beneficial. And we see that the European Commission understands this more. So, for example, just few years ago, this connection between education and environment wasn't that clear, especially in terms of formal education. Now we see that at least in Brussels there is an understanding that we really do have to change our curricula in the countries. Question is what will be the response of particular governments of the member states. So as you know, FOLM is an international project developed in 4 countries and with the participation of 7 partners, and we have already applied several times together for funding of projects like this that bring environment and youth closer to each other. But we really hope, and we are almost sure that there will be more opportunities for doing so in the coming years. And of course, we are very happy to join and to welcome more partners who think and share the same values as the FOLM Consortium. So I guess this is from my part, unless Iovine would like me to add anything.
No, that's perfect. Thanks a million, Joanna, for joining us and for to fill everybody in on what's happening in Europe as well. So we really appreciate you joining us today. So thank you for that. So yeah, I think thank you everybody for taking part in it. So I think what we'll do today is just have a quick, we have a few maybe questions that I've seen in the chat, just to wrap up with a few questions. So there was a big question there by Sinead, in terms of, do you feel that in both primary and secondary schools there is enough place-based experience in the curriculum? How do you feel it should be incorporated more? Should we have more specialized educators in our curriculums? From researching the curriculums, what I've seen is that the Department of Education are training teachers in schools instead of bringing in specialized teachers and trainers like the ones in FOLM. I can speak on my own personal behalf. That is something I would absolutely love to see, is to see outdoor education being incorporated into the schools in Ireland. I know Scotland are way ahead of the curve. They already have outdoor education written into their curriculum. So if we can follow Scotland's footsteps, I think we'll be doing quite well. I would personally love to see it, more of it being incorporated into the curriculum. I think there's a great opportunity that COVID has given us to help with place-based learning. And the great thing is that the environment is all around us. It's when they step outside the classroom, it's right there in their schoolyard. So it's like with Anya in Untitled Trust, it's equipping teachers with the right tools and training and experience of how to bring the children out into the outdoors and how you facilitate learning in the outdoor environment. So yes, absolutely, I see huge potential there. And I think on our RTE the other night there was a group of parents had actually built an outdoor school, and it was the parents themselves who had built it, and it's purely from a COVID perspective. They wanted to keep their children safe. So yeah. I think it'll be very interesting to see over the next few years how much of a growth outdoor education will take across the world, not just in Ireland and not just in Europe.
Do you mind me saying, sorry to interrupt you, but do you mind me saying as well, from my own experience of kind of say, like my cousin is in geography, he teaches geography, he's done his PhD in geography. And what he finds is that a lot of the curriculum is based on the theoretical aspect of it, that he barely gets enough time to actually bring the students outdoors. And then there's kind of the insurance aspect of it. But I think that's something that I've been trying to get onto the Department of Education about for a very long time, is the idea of actually having someone specialized, that knows about the insurance aspect, that knows about the safety aspect of it, that's someone that's, like my cousin said, like that basically any geography teacher that he's spoken to at conferences always says that they're overwhelmed with so much material and so much information that they would be happy to have someone there like that specialized to actually bring the kids outdoors that would know all this kind of, you know, this information already, that's already there and it's already trained, it's already gotten their PhDs, their masters, their, you know, they've come out of degrees like our degree in outdoor education, and that have that kind of natural knowledge to be able to you know, bring it out bring kids out into the outdoors. And I think that's our most important aspect of it. I think, you know, we need to follow the way that Scotland is going, the way, like the Big Ideas curriculum in Canada, which is something that I've worked with over in Canada. And they've fully incorporated in the outdoor education and environmental education into their curriculum. And from my own perspective and what I've seen is that kids have a more natural appreciation for the environment around them because of that education that they've been given within their curriculum. You know, I think, you know, our curriculum, and when kids are brought into school, they take things a bit more seriously. They kind of go, oh, this is the way things are. And, you know, if they're brought into a home environment and they're not, they don't have the parents that are not interested in that as well. I think, you know, it's not everyone has that. You know, not everyone has parents that are interested in bringing their kids outdoors, and they're not being given that opportunity when they go home. Fully integrating, as you said, is the way to go, like, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess my understanding then is like action is probably what's needed in terms of Ireland anyway. If we want to try and incorporate outdoor education into our curriculums, it's going to be either that we, you know, get it through a project and that we pilot it, then we see, okay, this works, you know, and then we present it to the EU or wherever we get the funding from. That's one, you know, way of doing it. But it's also collectively, we can individually write to, you know, our, you know, politicians and ask that outdoor education is taken seriously.
Doing that.
Yeah,
I've been tormenting them.
Exactly, but you know, that's where, you know, we can create these places and areas for people to actually sign petitions, and you know, by all of us having a collective, you know, conversation about it, that's how change happens.
Now they are actually, sorry to interrupt you again, but they are actually bringing in a sustainable education curriculum. So I think that is in the talks, all right. And I am actually talking to someone from Limerick here now that's actually part of that whole process. And there has been talks, but that's where ourselves as educators can kind of get involved and kind of say, well, look, actually, we actually have this already, you know, put in place. We can actually guide you as well, and kind of put our finger in, you know, kind of go hello into the curriculum, you know.
I'd be actually curious to hear Anya's perspective on it, because she, you know, she's been dealing with the primary school curriculum as well. So what's your thoughts on it, Anya?
Sorry, I am conscious of time and people. I could talk about this for hours. Yeah, we do a lot of work with teachers, training teachers, providing support. I've also done research trying to get the teacher's perspective on this. So looking at the barriers, I think Eula has mentioned as well a book about the, you know, the barriers teachers face. Our experiences, definitely teachers are totally open to it, want to engage, just need a little bit of support. I would be reluctant to go down the route of it being an external, which in some ways is contradictory because that's what we do, but we do that in the hope of empowering the teacher to then do it themselves in future years, which is how the model works. And the other thing I want to say is the primary curriculum in particular is phenomenal in Ireland. It's entirely place-based. There's so much opportunity to engage with this, and it's just about, I suppose, including it in the initial teacher education so the teachers see that this is a way of delivering their curriculum as opposed to something new that they need to do. And it is being incorporated. We work with Mary I a bit and with Marino, and you know, there's an openness and a willingness to engage. So I'd say it's positive. And then on the secondary side, I would say the new junior cycle short courses, we're developing one ourselves on a place-based approach, but there are a few of them in the works, and there's great opportunity there to allow learning to be more interdisciplinary, which obviously place-based learning is, which is positive. And you know, there's stuff in the chat there definitely about CPD, and I think there's an awful lot of opportunity there. But I've mentioned it already. I did a research paper on this a while back that's on our website. If anybody wants to have a look, feel free.
That'd be great. Thank you so much, Anya. Thank you.
Thanks, Anya. Thanks, Sinead, for that great question. We have had serious discussion going on in the chat, so definitely have a look through it there. So yeah, I'm just very conscious of the time now. So just kind of to wrap up, thank you so much to everyone who has taken part in this. Thank you to Daniel for your great speech. I think everyone was moved by it. Thanks to Fina for her video. Thank you, Anya, for your lovely words about Untitled and your research. Thank you to Jed for being a legend as usual, and showing great practical applications about place-based learning happening in Ireland. And thank you, Stephen, for bringing us on that journey of theoretical colonial. It's very interesting to see all the theory kind of behind it as well. This has been, personally, I've loved this, and it's great to see so many people from so many different backgrounds come together and have such a passion about the outdoors, about the environment, and where it is going forward. I've really enjoyed this NEF, definitely. Eula, did you have your hand up? Did you want to say something?
No, that was my my attempt to applaud. I thought there was a reaction, so
Oh,
I'll do it this way now. No. Very impressive.
Yeah.
Line of speakers. I just wrote it. Thank you.
Yeah, just thank you to all of you who came today, because you've made this webinar, and for all of your input. Really valued it. If I could ask you all to fill in a survey. Yay.
Thanks a million, Aveen.
Yeah, no, you're more than welcome, Sinead. What I might do is just share our contact details. So just if you want to contact me afterwards, or you want to learn more about the FOLM project, what other great work that we're doing, and I'll just put the survey into the chat now. If you could please answer it, that would be amazing. So I'll just put in a link, and if you could click on the link and just answer a few questions, that would be incredible. So thanks again, everyone, for your amazing input. It's been brilliant to hear how much place-based learning is actually happening across Ireland. And hopefully we can have more of this and more events like this. Yeah, thank you everybody for it. So I'll just stop recording. Okay, so stop recording now. So thank you. Thanks a million, everybody.
Well done, Arvin. Brilliant.
Thanks,
well
Marie.
done organising. Really good and engaging. So fair play to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arvin. That was absolutely amazing. I learned so much from the experience. Thanks a million, guys. You've all been brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Arvin. Thanks for the opportunity to come along.